Hey guys, tonight we're heading west. Not just any west though, this is Oregon Trail West, and we're not taking the sunny route. Nope, you've picked the winter departure, which basically means you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and the time you're listening in the comments below. I'm always curious where these stories end up. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your boots crunch over frosted dirt, the chill of late September biting through your socks like tiny wolves. Behind you, the wagon creaks under the weight of everything you own, plus a few things you probably shouldn't have packed. The oxen snort clouds of steam into the morning air, hooves tapping uncertain rhythms as they plod forward. You look around and realise most folks have already made it past the Rockies by now. You're just starting rookie move. Back in Independence, Missouri, the old-timers said, leave by May or pray. But your crops came in late, or your cousin got sick, or you were just plain stubborn. Whatever the excuse, now you're on the trail in autumn's dying light, and the map stretched before you might as well be a warning label. Do not attempt after October unless you hate living. This first few days actually trick you. The leaves are golden, the nights are crisp but survivable, and the morning frost on your blanket looks almost pretty. You roast coffee over the fire and sound like you're in some frontier Instagram post. You tell yourself you'll make up time. Spoiler, you won't. By the second week, reality starts nibbling at your confidence. The days shrink fast. Nightfall hits like a door slammed shut. You wake up with ice on your eyelashes and discover that your water barrel has frozen into a solid block. Someone tries to warm a tin of beans over a tiny fire, but the wind laughs and kills the flame in seconds. You chew cold beans. Not bad the first time. A bit grim by night 3. The trail narrows through Wyoming's South Pass, and already there's talk of turning back. But what's behind you? 200 miles of regret. What's ahead? Hope, or at least the idea of it. You keep going. One morning, a young couple's wagon gets stuck in a gully. The mud was slush the day before, now it's solid ice. The husband yells at the oxen, but the poor beasts are shivering too hard to pull. They try digging, but the ground's stiff as granite. Eventually, someone suggests chopping branches to wedge under the wheels. You work together in silence, your breath coming in sharp clouds. You've stopped feeling your toes. Later that week, you meet another family who made the mistake of camping too close to a creek. Overnight, their tent collapsed under snow and their blanket soaked through. The mother's fingers are black at the tips. Frostbite, probably. She doesn't say much. The kids look like ghosts. You share what little you have, but in the back of your mind you know that family won't make it much farther, and you're not even halfway yet. Historically, leaving for the Oregon Trail in late fall wasn't just risky, it was basically suicidal. Settlers knew the window. May to early July tops. You had to clear the Rockies before snow made them impassable. The Donner Party, infamous for their winter disaster in the Sierra Nevada, had one key thing in common with other late travellers. They underestimated the weather and overestimated their ability to fight it. Turns out, manifest destiny doesn't keep you warm at night. You start noticing small things, the way frost forms inside the wagon, the way people cough and don't stop, the way boots stiffen overnight and need to be warmed over a flame before you can wear them again. Your oxen begin to slow. They weren't bred for this, their hooves slip on frozen ruts, and one morning, one doesn't get up. You shoot it. No one says a word. That night, someone carves a tiny cross into a tree trunk. It's not for the ox, it's for the little girl who died 2 wagons back. Her father tried to bury her, but the ground was too hard, so they wrapped her in a quilt and left her near the river, covered in rocks. You helped carry the stones. You still can't shake the weight of them. And here's the fringe twist. Some late-season travellers actually thought winter might work in their favour. Cooler temps meant fewer flies, less disease, and solid ground instead of mud. Plus, some claim to make better time because snow packed the trail. That's one interpretation. Another interpretation is hypothermia. Some scholars still debate why so many pioneers ignored the well-known weather patterns. Was it arrogance? Hope? Misinformation? Maybe it's just what humans do. We gamble. The Oregon Trail was the ultimate slot machine. You pull the handle and hope your number comes up somewhere green and fertile. But winter? Winter was the house, and the house almost always won. You feel it in your fingers now. The ache, You ball your hands into fists inside your gloves, hoping to squeeze back the warmth. It's not working. Up ahead, the trail curves around a bluff. The wind kicks up, and suddenly it's a wall of icy air. Your scarf isn't enough. Nothing is. You try not to cry, not because you're brave, but because the tears will freeze on your cheeks. And this is just the beginning. The first snow doesn't fall like a cinematic moment. There's no grand hush across the landscape, no slow-motion flurries catching in the light. It just starts, cold, blunt, and mean. At first, you think it's ash from a distant fire. Then it lands on your sleeve and melts with that familiar wet sting. Everyone in the wagon train looks up at once, eyes narrowing against the sky. And no one says a word. November has arrived. The mornings now begin in pitch black. No roosters crowing, no birds chirping, just the creak of frozen canvas, the snap of someone's breath in the air, and the grumble of reluctant oxen waking up to another punishing day. You've started sleeping in your clothes, every layer you own stacked on top of each other, like you're trying to insulate yourself from reality. And honestly, you are. By the time you crawl out of the wagon, the trail looks completely different. The once visible path is gone, buried under a crust of icy snow. The only way forward is by guessing. Someone up front uses a stick to probe the ground for ruts, potholes, or worse, hidden ravines. That man used to be a banker. Now he's a glorified trail detective with frostbitten knuckles. It doesn't take long for the snow to turn into a full-on problem. It clings to the wheels, gumming them up with thick, heavy sludge. You stop every few hundred yards to chip away the build-up, your fingers cramping inside your mittens. And when the snow starts blowing sideways, visibility drops to nothing. You can't see the wagon in front of you. You can't even see your own hand if you stretch it out. This is what they call a whiteout. It's not just inconvenient, it's disorienting. The ground, the air, the sky, all of it blends into one endless sheet of grey-white nothing. You start to feel like you're floating, or maybe sinking. The trail captain calls a halt, shouting over the wind, but his voice sounds muffled, like it's underwater. You tie your wagon to the one ahead of you with a rope, and still you drift apart in the gusts. The storm lasts 3 days. During those 72 hours, you don't move, not even an inch. You huddle under canvas, blankets piled on top of you, sharing body heat like you're trying to reverse entropy. You burn through most of your firewood and half your food reserves. Someone suggests eating the flour paste used to seal the wagon seams. You laugh until you realise they weren't joking. Historically speaking, getting caught in an early season whiteout was a death sentence for many Oregon Trail travellers. Especially in the higher elevations, like the Blue Mountains or the Rockies, snowstorms could trap entire wagon trains for days, sometimes weeks. People lost sense of direction, wandered off looking for firewood or water, and simply vanished. Later, they'd be found under a drift, a few feet from camp. And the snow isn't your only enemy. As it accumulates, it adds weight to everything: wagon tops, tents, clothes. The ropes holding your canvas in place snap under the strain, and one night the roof of a nearby wagon collapses inward. The family inside scrambles out, covered in snow and splinters. No one is seriously hurt, but now they have no shelter. You make room for them in yours, pressing tighter together, hoping the combined misery will keep you alive. You've also learned a new sound, the eerie creak of ice forming on wood. It groans across the wagon frame like it's trying to decide whether to snap, and when it does crack, it's like a gunshot in the quiet. One night you hear that crack followed by a shriek. A man had climbed up to clear snow from his wagon and slipped. He landed badly. Compound fracture, bone through skin. There's no doctor, just some whiskey, a leather strap to bite down on, and a man with shaky hands who's seen a leg amputated once before. You don't watch. You can't. But you hear it. The soaring, the screaming, the fringe fact, snow blindness. It's not just an Arctic explorer problem. Oregon Trail travellers got it too, especially in November and December, when sunlight bounced off snow with brutal intensity. Without proper eye protection, which meant smoked glass or even just dark cloth, you could literally burn your corneas. You've started wrapping a scarf across your face, leaving just a slit to peer through. It helps, kind of, but now your breath freezes on the fabric, turning it into a stiff crust of ice against your lips. There's debate among historians about how often entire wagon trains were completely immobilized by snow versus simply slowed down. Diaries are vague. Some survivors dramatized, others downplayed. But what is clear is that once the snow fell hard, mobility plummeted. The average wagon traveled 15 to 20 miles a day in good conditions. In deep snow, maybe 5. On bad days, 0. You lose time, you lose days, you lose the sun. When the storm finally breaks, the silence is terrifying. The sky opens up to a washed-out blue, and the sun feels like a joke, light without warmth. You dig out the wagons, one at a time, uncovering canvas flaps and buried wheels. A man's horse froze standing up, and he finds it like a sad statue, eyes iced over, tongue stuck to its own teeth. That day, the trail captain decides you need to move. Storm or no storm. Supplies are low, and staying still means certain death. You pack everything wet and frozen, load the wagons with clumsy, numb hands, and start again. Each mile is a battle. The snow isn't fresh anymore. It's icy, uneven, pocked with the indentations of failed steps and fallen animals. The oxen stumble, hooves skidding on the slick surface. Every noise seems louder, chains rattling, boots crunching, distant howls that might be wind or something else. You're no longer thinking about Oregon. You're not even thinking about the next fort. You're just trying to survive the next hill. You finally reach a ridge where you can see down into a valley. A few sparse trees dot the landscape, their branches weighed down with snow. Smoke rises from a campfire ahead. Not your group, someone else. Another wagon train, maybe, or what's left of one. A shape moves between the trees. Could be a man, could be a bear, could be both. You tighten your coat and descend. This is November on the Oregon Trail, and you haven't seen the worst of it yet. The snow comes and goes like a moody god, sometimes heavy, sometimes melting just enough to lull you into false hope. But now it's early December, and there's no denying it anymore. You're in the thick of winter, and the trail is turning against you. Not that it was ever on your side, your clothes were never made for this. Back in Missouri, they looked sturdy enough. Homespun wool, thick leather boots, a warm hat your mother insisted you bring. But none of it was tested against weeks of cold, wet, and wind so sharp it feels like it's carving its name into your cheek. The coat you wear is already stiff with ice around the hem, the buttons long gone. You've wrapped it with twine to keep it shut. Your socks are perpetually damp. Your gloves, too thin to start with, are now stiff as bark. Everyone looks like walking scarecrows, mismatched layers, soot-smudged faces, eyes hollow with the kind of fatigue that gets into your bones. During a short break by the fire, someone admits they've started sleeping with rocks. You give them a look and they shrug. Heat them by the fire, wrap them in cloth, put them in your bedroll. Another person says they rub pine resin on their boots to make them more waterproof. Someone else swears by stuffing dry grass in their sleeves for insulation. Nobody's laughing. The only thing more dangerous than cold is pretending you're too proud to fight it creatively. Historically poor, the idea of winter gear didn't exist the way we understand it now. Travellers in the mid-1800s wore layered wool, sure, but there were no synthetic fabrics, no waterproof membranes, no Gore-Tex or down-filled parkas. Clothes were heavy, slow to dry, and awful once wet. Mittens soaked through, boots leaked, and wool, though warm even when damp, could only do so much when you were knee-deep in snow and sweat-drenched from hauling your wagon out of yet another rut. You've started noticing the colour blue, specifically in your fingertips. You sit by the fire at night, trying to massage warmth back into your hands, but your skin feels like it belongs to someone else. The colour won't leave. One morning you wake up and your left thumb doesn't bend right. There's a strange grey patch near the nail. You show someone. They look away too quickly. That's not frost nip, that's frostbite. Early stage if you're lucky. Someone else in the group isn't so lucky. One of the older men, name's Hank you think, took a tumble into an icy creek while crossing on a fallen log. He laughed at first, said it was bracing. By sundown he's feverish and shivering under every blanket they could find. The next morning he's silent. His beard is frozen to his collar, eyes glassed over. His boots are still on, frozen solid around his feet. Nobody even tries to take them off. They leave him behind, not out of cruelty, but practicality. There's no time, no shovel strong enough for this ground, no strength to spare. They drag his body off the trail, stack some branches over him, and mark a nearby tree with a notch. That's all you can do now. There's no ceremony, no words, just breath in the air, and keep walking. There's a strange irony in how beautiful everything looks. The snow glistens in the sun, trees shimmer with ice, and the world feels painted with silver and white. But you're too tired to appreciate it. Your body is in fight mode, and beauty becomes irrelevant when your toes are numb and your teeth won't stop chattering. You dream of warmth now, not luxury, just warmth. A feather bed, a stove, dry socks. Fringe fact of the day, during the gold rush some frontier travellers swore by bear grease as a layer of protection against the cold. They'd rub it over their cheeks, arms, and even inside boots. It smelled terrible, but apparently helped with insulation. You don't have bear grease, but someone in your wagon train does have a tin of lard. The smell is horrific, but they're still alive. Even worse than the cold, though, is what it does to morale. People stop talking, jokes disappear, nights are long, and nobody sings anymore. You lie awake listening to the fire crackle and the wind moan through the trees. Every gust makes the canvas flap like a whip. You imagine things moving out there. Wolves, maybe, or worse, people, desperate ones. You're not sure which scares you more. A heated argument breaks out one morning. A family's wagon is stuck in the snow and their oxen are clearly failing. The father begs for help. The others hesitate. If they stop, they fall behind. If they lend oxen, theirs might weaken too. In the end, they compromise. Half the group moves ahead to scout while the others stay back to dig out the wagon. It costs a full day, and that night the temperature drops into single digits. There's open debate among historians about how much cooperation really happened among trail groups once conditions turned grim. Some say that hardship brought out a surprising level of solidarity. People pooling food, taking in orphans, risking their own lives for strangers. Others argue that once survival kicks in, the wagon train becomes every family for themselves. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. But you're starting to feel the strain. Every helping hand comes with a cost. You notice your horse limping. You climb down and check its hoof. Ice packed between the shoe and the flesh. You pick it out with your knife, apologizing under your breath. The horse doesn't flinch. Is beyond pain now, just tired. Like you. That night someone manages to light a good fire. Dry pine and a splash of whiskey maybe. The flames dance high, and for a brief moment the camp feels almost human again. Someone shares a story about summer swimming in a river, laughing into the heat. Someone else talks about peaches, actual peaches. The kind with juice that runs down your chin. You close your eyes and try to picture it, but all you can see is white. Endless white. You haven't changed clothes in a week. You stink. You can't remember the last time you properly ate. You chew hardtack like it's gravel. The snow is creeping into your dreams now, soft, suffocating, always cold, and winter's just getting started. The wind has changed. You feel it before you hear it. It moves through the trees like a warning, not howling. No, it's more subtle than that. It's a kind of whispering roar, like the world inhaling. You pull your scarf tighter, but it doesn't help. Nothing helps when the sky turns white and gravity becomes optional. That's what it feels like when the snow starts falling sideways. You've entered the realm of snowblind travel, where everything is white and still you can't see a thing. It's not the deep blizzard. Not yet. It's something quieter but almost worse. A constant sheet of fine snow swirling around your head, stinging your eyes and turning every direction into the same featureless haze. You stumble forward with your head down, boots crunching through powder, and you don't know if you're walking on the trail or in circles. Ahead the wagon train is starting to spread out. People fall behind. Some surge ahead to scout, hoping to find a break in the weather, a tree line, a river, something. Others hang back to help stragglers. And the rope system returns, tying wagons together to keep from getting separated. You watch it all like a dream, because your own thoughts are slow now. They come sluggish, like your brain is trying to move through syrup. Snowblindness hits someone that afternoon. It's not immediate. First he squints, then he complains his eyes burn him. Then he falls off his horse, clutching his face. The eyes themselves, bloodshot, puffy, streaming tears that freeze before they hit his chin. His wife tries to wrap his head in a shawl, but it's too late. The snow and sun did their work. He won't be seeing clearly for days. That means he's useless on the trail, another body to drag, feed, and keep alive. You're realizing in real time that whiteouts are about more than being lost. They're about losing everything, your sense of time, space, direction, even memory. You start forgetting how long you've been walking, hours, days. Your feet move on autopilot while your mind flickers in and out. Someone calls your name and it takes you too long to answer. Historically, whiteout conditions contributed to disorientation, frostbite and wagon damage across high elevation passes. Snow-covered ruts and landmarks, making even experienced trail leaders question whether they were still on course. It wasn't uncommon for groups to travel miles off the intended route without realizing it. When they did, backtracking was rarely an option, especially with hungry animals and dwindling supplies. Some wagons vanished entirely in these conditions, found years later by other travellers in spring, tipped and frozen like time capsules. You pass by a small cairn of stones half buried in snow. There's a scarf tied to a stick poking out. Someone's grave, you guess. The scarf is faded red, fluttering weakly. No one in your party placed it. It's from a group before you. The ground here is haunted by other people's mistakes. The oxen begin to panic mid-afternoon. A narrow pass ahead is slick with ice, barely wide enough for the wagons. A team skids, hooves flailing. One falls hard, legs splayed, chest heaving. You hear a snap. Everyone goes still. The sound means a broken leg. Useless now. The man leading the wagon curses and grabs his rifle. He hesitates just a moment, maybe hoping for a miracle, maybe just waiting for someone else to volunteer. Then he pulls the trigger. One shot. One silence. You pretend you don't hear the moan that follows. With one ox down, the wagon has to be abandoned. They unload what they can, redistributing goods among the remaining wagons. The rest, tools, furniture, a trunk full of books, gets left in the snow. You feel guilty watching it happen. Then you remember your own aching legs, your own empty stomach. There's no room for sentiment. The fringe trick you try tonight comes from an old trapper's tale, rubbing snow on your feet to dry them before bed. The idea is that the snow wicks moisture away. You try it once. Your skin feels like it's being flayed. It might work for seasoned mountain men, but you'd rather sleep in wet socks. That night, a girl, maybe 10 years old, wanders out of camp. No one notices for over an hour. When they do, torches are lit and voices shout into the darkness. "Anna! Anna! Can you hear us?" She's found shivering near a snowbank, curled like a rabbit, barely conscious. Her cheeks are raw. Her boots are missing. She must have pulled them off, confused. One of the mothers wraps her in a blanket and holds her all night. The girl wakes up in the morning, but her feet don't move anymore. There's no map for this kind of hardship, no checklist. You just keep going because stopping feels like admitting it's over. Your fingers are constantly cracked and the skin between them bleeds if you flex too hard. You start rationing your movements, saving energy not just for walking, but for the act of lifting a spoon or untying a bootlace. Everything feels like effort. Some historians argue that the most dangerous part of winter on the trail wasn't the weather itself, but what the weather did to decision-making. Hunger, cold, and sleep deprivation turned sharp minds dull. People forgot to tie animals. Fires went unwatched. Wagons rolled. A mother once fell asleep breastfeeding and woke to find the baby blue and silent. You heard that story 3 camps back. You think about it every night now. You trudge onward the next morning wrapped in layers that now feel like chains. The trail becomes steep again, some nameless ridge that wasn't marked on your map. You don't even question it. You just go up, step after breathless step. The sky is so white it seems to glow, and for a moment you think you're walking into nothingness. You wonder if this is how it ends, not with a blizzard, but with you simply vanishing into the blank. Then someone cries out. A shape on the horizon. Trees. Smoke. A cabin. You can't be sure, but it's something. Everyone picks up the pace, boots thudding over snow-packed dirt. Your heart starts to pound. It could be salvation, or it could be a trap. You don't care anymore. You just want to stop walking. You stumble forward, half believing the whole thing's a hallucination. Turns out it's real. A fur trapper's hut. Small, slanted, one crooked window, but inside it's warm. A fire burns, a stew bubbles. The man inside barely blinks as your group pours in, half dead and whispering thanks. He doesn't say much, just nods once and ladles food into bowls. He's not a rescuer. He's just someone who managed to survive the cold and maybe feels like he owes the trail something. You sleep indoors that night for the first time in weeks. The floor is hard and the smell of wood smoke clings to everything. But your body melts into it like a prayer. The window fogs with frost. Outside the storm picks up again. And still, you'll have to go back out there, soon. The warmth from the trapper's cabin doesn't last. By morning the fire's down to embers and the stew pot is empty. You open your eyes to the groan of wood beams contracting in the cold, your breath fogging up in front of your face again. You were warm for one night, and already your body had the audacity to get used to it. Now, stepping back out into the frozen white feels like betrayal. Your joints crack as you move like twigs snapping underfoot. One person refuses to get up. They've decided quietly that they're not leaving. No arguing. They curl back into their blanket like it's a coffin lid. You don't have the energy to fight them. You're not even sure they're wrong. Outside, the wagons have a thick crust of snow covering them like icing on a stale cake. You dig them out slowly, hacking at ice with the dull edge of an axe. The oxen are stiff and sluggish. You rub snow into their legs to stimulate blood flow, not because you believe it works, but because it's the only thing you can do. One of them coughs, and that's not something you want to hear from a beast that weighs a ton. You try not to think about what you'll do if it dies. The snow's deeper now. The wheels don't roll so much as grind and shudder, forcing everyone to walk beside the wagons to push. Your boots slip constantly, and the trail has become a frozen treadmill. All effort, no forward motion, and there's the wind again, cutting through every layer you have like it's nothing. It gets inside your bones, your teeth, your lungs. You can't remember what your real voice sounds like, just the wheeze of cold air in and out. That afternoon you run out of bread. Then the bacon goes. Someone had a bag of dried apples. That's gone now too. You check your stores and do a mental count. You've got a few pounds of flour left, some salt, a dwindling sack of beans, and that's about it. Rations are cut again. Half a cup of beans, a spoonful of flour paste, and maybe, if you're lucky, a scrap of jerky. It's survival food now. The kind you chew slowly, not because you're savouring it, but because if you eat it too fast, your stomach will revolt. This is where things get real. Because without food, your body stops generating heat. Without heat, the cold starts to eat you from the inside. You notice everyone's quieter, slower. One man stares at his hands for 15 minutes straight, unmoving, his mouth slightly open. When someone tries to snap him out of it, he just blinks and says, "I thought they were gloves." They weren't. He'd taken them off an hour ago and didn't even realise. Historically, starvation and malnutrition were some of the most common killers on the Oregon Trail. Not disease, not attacks, but the simple fact that you couldn't carry enough food to make it through delays. Many families underestimated how much they'd need for a 5 to 6 month journey. Add winter delays, animal deaths, and weather-related standstills, and suddenly your 6-month stash has to last 8, or 9, or never. You try to melt snow for water, but snow alone doesn't cut it. It takes too much heat to melt enough, and when it does melt, it's barely above freezing. Drinking it makes you colder, not warmer. One of the women suggests adding pine needles to the pot. She says it adds vitamin C. You try it. The tea tastes like tree bark boiled in shoe leather. But you pretend it helps, maybe it does. By dusk, your legs are rubber. You can't tell where your body ends and your coat begins. When you finally stop for the night, it's only because someone collapses. Face down in the snow, just tips forward like a puppet with the strings cut. They're still breathing, barely. You drag them to the fire and wrap them in every blanket you can spare. You don't say anything, no one does. There's a slow, creeping conversation around the campfire that you all avoid directly, but it hangs there like smoke. What happens when there's no food left? You've all heard stories, the ones that happen farther west, like the Donner Party. You tell yourselves you're not like them. You're civilized, you're moral, you're prepared. But are you? The fringe detail here, something most folks don't know, is that some Oregon Trail travelers packed coffin nails with them. Small metal pins or stakes that could be used for improvised burial markers, or other darker purposes. You don't ask why the old man in the next wagon over has a bag of them. You just notice he keeps checking it every night, like he's counting down. You fall asleep thinking about food. You dream of pies and roast chicken and green beans slick with butter. Then you wake up to the sound of someone dry heaving outside the tent. Not because they're sick, because they're hungry. The body, reaching empty, starts acting like it's simply poisoned. Nausea, shivers, dizziness. You recognize the symptoms in yourself, you just don't say it out loud. In the morning you make hardtack. Flour and water, pressed into cakes and cooked on a flat stone. You pretend they taste fine. You try not to cry while chewing. It feels like eating drywall. There's debate among scholars about how early groups dealt with starvation. Some say they relied heavily on wild game, rabbits, squirrels, even mice, but in winter those options vanish. Some did trap what they could, but the energy required to hunt often burned more calories than it gained. Others scouted ahead for forts or settlements with food. But many forts closed for the winter or had nothing left to give. The worst off simply stopped walking. You pass a discarded piano on the trail. No one can believe someone brought it in the first place. It sits half buried in snow, one leg broken, keys frozen in place. Someone plays a note. It's horribly out of tune and makes a sound like a ghost trying to whistle. Still, it's a sound that isn't wind or footsteps or coughing. You all stand there, weirdly grateful, before walking on. That day, someone suggests killing one of the horses for meat. It's not an easy choice. That horse was a wedding gift. It has a name. But when your daughter asks for more beans and you have nothing left to give, the choice starts to look less like murder and more like sacrifice. That night you eat horse meat. It's tough, gamey, and chews like guilt. But it fills your belly. People eat in silence. The children cry less. And for once, you feel something close to full. But the moment passes fast. Your body is already asking what's next. You're not in survival mode anymore. You're in endurance mode. Survival is a decision. Endurance is just not stopping. And winter is far from done with you. The rivers are different now, not wild and roaring like they were in spring. No dramatic crossings with water up to your waist. No rush of current stealing away your boots. Winter rivers are quiet, still. They look safe. And that's exactly what makes them deadly. You approach the first one in the early morning when everything's coated in a brittle frost and your breath hangs like a cloud. The water is frozen over, a flat white sheen stretching from bank to bank. Someone walks out onto it cautiously, pressing a stick into the surface like they're tapping glass. It holds. They wave everyone forward. Big mistake. Half the wagons make it across. Then one of the heavier ones, stacked high with barrels and an anvil, because someone thought blacksmithing tools were worth the weight, hits a thin patch. There's a loud crack like a gunshot aimed straight at the earth, and suddenly the ice gives out beneath it. The entire back end of the wagon plunges through, dragging one ox in with it. For a moment no one moves. Just the sound of wood groaning, hooves splashing, and someone yelling, "Get the yoke off!" Men rush in, axes raised, hacking at the frozen leather straps while the animal screams. The water is black, swirling with shards of ice and panic. The oxen thrash until one slips completely under. The other barely survives, coughing and snorting as it's dragged free. The wagon is a total loss. Its contents, grain sacks, tools, spare clothing, sink fierce bubbles rising in frantic pops before disappearing. You try to help, pulling salvage from the freezing edge, but your hands go numb instantly. The man who owns the wagon just kneels at the edge, staring into the hole like it swallowed part of his soul. Welcome to the death lottery of frozen rivers. Historically, these ice crossings were some of the most dangerous moments on the winter trail. Unlike in warmer months, when river crossings were visibly risky, winter crossings felt deceptively easy. If the ice was too thin, or weakened by underground current, you could lose everything in seconds. And since there were no bridges and few alternate routes, turning back wasn't often an option. Sometimes entire families were lost this way, their wagons falling through as they slept or moved at night, trying to make up time. After the river incident, everyone walks more carefully. You test every footstep. You prod snowbanks for hidden water traps. One man ties a rope around his waist and crawls across a narrow creek like a spider, dragging a sled behind him with the supplies. Another family builds makeshift snowshoes from tree branches and strips of hide, trying to distribute their weight over the ice. The effort is slow, painfully slow, but you keep moving. You make camp that night near the riverbank, still shaken. There's no firewood nearby. You end up burning broken wagon parts. The smell of charred oak and metal filings fills the air. You roast horse meat over it and pretend it's not tainted with the scent of oil and loss. One child asks if the ice would have held if they hadn't crossed in the morning. Maybe the sun warmed it just enough to weaken it. Maybe it was too early and hadn't refrozen from the previous afternoon. There's debate, of course. Everyone has a theory and none of them help. The truth is, winter rivers don't follow rules. You get lucky or you don't. The fringe tips someone remembers that night. Toss a rock ahead before stepping onto ice. If the rock skitters and thuds, it's solid as if it sinks or bounces too softly. You turn around. It's an old trapper's trick, apparently. You start carrying a pocket full of stones. It's either superstition or survival. Honestly, at this point it doesn't matter which. The next morning it's colder than it's ever been. Your breath freezes to your collar. The air bites the inside of your nostrils like tiny knives. You hold your hands near the coals from the night's fire, but there's barely enough warmth to loosen your fingers. One man's lips are cracked and bleeding. He doesn't bother wiping it away. Travel is harder now, not because of storms, but because everything hurts. Your boots are falling apart, the soles are separating. Every step feels like walking barefoot on frozen gravel. Someone's wrapped their feet in rags and rawhide. Another is using bark. It works, kind of. You take notes mentally, just in case. Midway through the day, you come across a frozen pond with a wagon sitting perfectly upright in the middle of it. Just there, abandoned. Snow dusted over the canvas. The animals are gone. No sign of people. You approach slowly, half expecting it to creak or move. Inside there are blankets, some mouldy bread, and a Bible open to Psalms. The ink smeared from moisture. The page flutters in the wind like it's trying to speak. No one wants to touch anything. You back away like it's cursed. Maybe it is. Some historians argue that many abandoned wagons weren't the result of disaster, but choice. Families would ditch them to move faster on foot, carrying only what they could. But in winter, that decision almost always ended in death. The cold was faster than they were, and yet, even knowing that, some still tried. Believing foot travel gave them more control, or maybe just less hope to lose all at once. That night, you can't shake the image of the untouched wagon. You dream of being left behind in it, forgotten in the middle of a frozen lake. You wake up gasping, tangled in your blanket, the wind howling through the trees. You've started noticing how often people stare into the distance now, not like they're watching for threats, more like they're waiting to see something appear, something that might offer escape, a fort, a farmhouse, a sign, anything, but nothing's coming, not today. You cross 2 more frozen rivers over the next 3 days. The first holds, the second cracks just a little, but the sleds make it. You start muttering prayers before every crossing, even if you've never prayed before. Doesn't matter which god's listening, or if any are. One day, while gathering firewood, you find a pair of boots nailed to a tree. Leather, torn at the seams, clearly left behind with intention. Beside them, a name scratched into the bark, J. Adams. No date, just that. As if to say, I was here, I made it this far. You wonder if he kept walking without them, you wonder if he made it. By the end of the week, one of your own disappears. He leaves a note carved into the snow beside his tent. Tell them I tried. His tracks go off into the woods, no one follows. Not because you don't care, because you know how that story ends. The trail is a river too, just one you're trying not to fall through. Firewood becomes the new gold. That's not an exaggeration, it's currency now. You'd trade food for it, clothes for it, maybe even favours you haven't named yet. Without it, the cold wind's faster. And out here, wood is either green, buried, or burned already. Every stop, your first job isn't making camp or cooking, it's scavenging. You claw at snowbanks, wander into thickets, break apart dead branches with numb fingers. You eye fence posts and even wooden crosses with a certain look. You're not proud of it, but fire is fire. The forest, when you're lucky enough to be near one, gives you shelter and danger in equal parts. You stumble through brittle underbrush, crunching over frozen leaves, searching for something dry enough to burn. The best wood is pine, snaps easy, catches fast eating. But at this point, you'll settle for anything that doesn't hiss when it hits the flame. You break apart crates, you saw up fallen trees, you even pry planks off abandoned wagons. That's when you find the first makeshift fire pit built entirely from stripped wagon wheels. The iron rims have been bent around it like a cooking ring, and inside are the blackened remains of someone's survival attempt. Charcoal bones of who knows what, maybe squirrel, maybe something else. You feel the warmth just imagining what that fire must have been like. You gather what's left of the ash and bury it. A little respect, even if you're jealous they had fuel. Back at your own camp, the fires grow smaller each night. You ration wood now the same way you ration food. A single log might get split 3-4 ways. Fires are for cooking only, no more for comfort. At night, you curl up close to the embers and breathe slow, trying to trap what little heat remains. Sometimes the logs spark and everyone turns like startled animals, hopeful it means the fire will last a bit longer. Historically, the firewood crisis hit hardest in the Great Plains and mountain passes, where tree growth was sparse or inaccessible. Pioneers often carried bundles of kindling early on, assuming they'd find more later. But winter changed the equation. Deadfall became buried under feet of snow, and even when found, most of it was soaked or frozen solid. Travellers burned anything they could get their hands on: wagons, furniture, fence rails, family heirlooms. Some even burned dried animal dung called buffalo chips. Not the worst smell, surprisingly, but still not ideal when you're trying to sleep next to it. That fringe fact? Some people burned bacon, actual fat, melted in it in pans and let it burn slow. It gave off greasy smoke and made everything smell like a butcher shop, but it kept fingers from freezing. You try it once, just a scrap of bacon you've been hoarding. It sizzles and lights up like a candle. Everyone leans in like moths. It only lasts a few minutes, but for those few, you're gods again. Warm, greasy gods. One night someone proposes a fire lottery. Everyone tosses in something flammable, and whoever wins gets an extra log for the night. It's stupid, and also the most fun you've had in weeks. You offer up the last bit of dry bark you'd saved. Someone else tosses in an old diary page. The winner is a teenage boy who's been quiet since his mother died. He breaks the log in two and shares it with a neighbour without saying a word. That's the closest thing to joy you've seen in days. But the next night is different. The wind changes. The sky clouds over. You can smell snow coming, not falling yet, just waiting. The air gets heavy, damp, not in a warm way, more like a warning. And when darkness falls, it does so completely. No moon, no stars, just black. The kind of dark that makes you forget you're a person, and not just something shivering in the wilderness. You gather around a small, angry fire built from twigs and pine cones. The flame sputters, flickers, then dies. Someone tries to relight it with a flint spark, but their hands are too cold to strike right. Another tries with a strip of cloth soaked in bacon grease. It smokes, but doesn't catch. A third person finally lights a page from a journal, the last one you suspect. It flares, catches the edge of a twig, and the fire is reborn. Barely. You sleep without your boots on for once, drying them near the flame. A risky move, but your feet are bleeding from days of damp friction, and you're gambling now. Half asleep, you hear someone muttering, praying maybe, or talking to someone who's no longer here. You roll over and wrap yourself tighter in your blanket, pretending not to notice. In the morning, the boots are stiff as stone. One's been scorched on the sole, the leather warped, still better than frostbite. The debate historians love to have is this: did people underestimate the need for fare, or did they simply run out of options? Diaries suggest both. Some travellers treated fire as an afterthought, assuming there'd always be something to burn. Others knew exactly how dire it would get and still couldn't beat the math. The Oregon Trail in winter was a subtraction problem. Every day you had less than before. Less food, less woodard, less health, less hope. You feel it now, the equation tightening around you. Another day, another hill. Your wagon squeals with every turn, the wooden spokes groaning under the cold. Someone's axe handle snaps while chopping firewood. It just breaks like a twig. Dry rot from moisture and cold, no replacement. That means one less tool. You watch him throw it to the side like it betrayed him. When you make camp that night, you find your fire ring has been buried under a drift. You dig it out with your bare hands, fingers purple and stinging. It takes 40 minutes to build a fire strong enough to warm water for beans. You share the pot with 3 others. No one speaks. One man burns a chair leg that still has his wife's initials carved into it. Another finds a piece of birch bark, dry, flammable, a miracle, and treats it like treasure. You start wrapping the inside of your coat with strips of cloth soaked in grease, hoping for some kind of insulation. You even consider cutting up your tent to make boots. You don't do it. Not yet. The truth is, you've started measuring everything by how long it can burn. The last firewood run ends with a broken wrist. A young boy climbs a tree to cut dead branches, slips, and lands wrong. He screams once, then bites it back. The wrist is already swelling. His father lashes it with leather and tells him to keep moving. "You'll forget about it when you're colder," he says. Maybe that's true. Or maybe he just doesn't want to waste wood on a fire they can't afford. That night, the campfire is smaller than ever, just enough to see each other's faces. You stare at the coals long after the flames are gone, willing them to relight. And deep inside, you know, tomorrow you'll have to start burning things that weren't meant to be burned. The animals always die first. It's not personal. It's just the cold doing what the cold does best, claiming what's weakest, what's unprotected, what breathes and bleeds but doesn't know how to beg for mercy. The oxen go in pairs mostly. One starts stumbling, short of breath, foam at the lips, and you know before it hits the ground that it won't get up again. You try everything, coaxing, shouting, kicking the snow around its hooves to give it room. But when the body gives out, that's it. The engine of your journey just stop. You shoot it, of course. There's no alternative. Letting it suffer would be crueler than ending it. But that shot echoes through the trees in a way that feels ceremonial now. Like a church bell tolling, announcing to the rest of the trail, Another's gone. Who's next? After a while, the animals stop struggling. The last few simply lie down and close their eyes, as if they've made peace with the trail in a way none of you ever will. You run out of bullets before you run out of animals, so eventually you resort to knives. Not out of brutality, just necessity. And yes, you eat them, eventually. It starts with justification. Better to use what we can than let it go to waste. Logical, practical, even moral in a way. You flinch a little the first time, chewing slowly, trying to separate the memory of the animal from the taste. But that fades quickly. Hunger burns away sentiment like fire to paper. There's no salt left, so everything tastes like copper and ash. You boil the tougher meat into soups, add pine needles or lichen just to trick your brain into thinking it's seasoned. Some get creative. Someone soaks leather straps overnight and stews them with marrow. It's barely food, but it goes down. You start to smell it on yourselves. The meat smoke, the blood-stained sleeves, the heavy scent of grease that clings no matter how many layers you wear. You all stink like predators now, like things the forest should fear. Historically, pioneers often expected to hunt their way across the plains and mountains, believing they'd find deer, elk, or bison when rations ran low. But by winter, that wildlife had either migrated or been hunted to near extinction by earlier travellers. What remained were stringy, half-frozen animals too weak to chase or too quick to catch. Horses, oxen, and even dogs became fallback options, not because people were savage, but because there wasn't anything else, and in truth many didn't last long enough to get that desperate. But you did, and now every meal feels like a countdown. The fringe fact that catches your ear one morning, told by a man who might be lying, might not, is that in the Alps some people used it a powdered bone as flour when they ran out of grain. Crushed and baked into cakes. It's hard to imagine that now. Until you find yourself holding the last of the cornmeal and wondering what's left in the hoof of that ox. The decision to kill the last horse is made quietly, by vote. Nobody cheers, nobody cries. You try not to look it in the eyes when it goes down. It kicks once, then goes still. That night you eat by starlight. The sky is brutally clear. Millions of tiny stars blinking over your heads like they're watching a show. Your breath clouds up and freezes to your lips. The meat sizzles over a weak fire and someone jokes, "If we survive this, I'm never eating stew again." A few chuckles, hollow, but real. There's one boy in the group who refuses to eat the animals. He's been holding on to jerky from early in the journey, rationing it obsessively. But tonight, he pulls out the last strip. It's gone in seconds. He stares at the stew but doesn't move. Eventually he lies down by the fire and pulls his blanket over his face. By morning, he's still breathing, but just barely. A lot of historians romanticize the pioneer spirit, how settlers braved unimaginable conditions in search of a better life. But what they often gloss over is how that spirit got gutted by frostbite and hunger. What gets praised as endurance was often just exhaustion with nowhere else to go. And you feel that now, in every step, every bite, every drawn-out day that feels like a week. You stop naming the animals. Too risky. Names become stories, and stories make meat hard to swallow. So the last mule isn't Clara anymore, she's just the mule. And when she falls in the snow, you don't hesitate. You skin her before she's cold, you've gotten faster. You know which parts to save, which tendons are worth boiling for glue or broth. The kids ask fewer questions. They know. You think about how this will affect them when, if, you make it to Oregon. Will they hate animals or themselves? You dream of fresh bread, of potatoes, of eggs fried in butter. The dreams wake you up hungrier than before, and that's the worst part, being tormented by comfort. You try not to think of it as a punishment, but some nights it really does feel like this trail is angry with you for wanting something better. The fringe moment comes when someone offers you a bone, just a bone. No meat, no marrow, just the shape of a meal that used to exist. You take it and gnaw at it anyway. That's what you've become. Desperate, humble, reduced, and still moving. You find an abandoned campsite later that week. Just ashes, some cracked bowls, and a pile of discarded shoes. Good ones, too. They've been left in a neat line, like their owners vanished in mid-step. You don't ask questions. You just take the shoes. They're dry, and your feet are raw. You wonder, in quiet moments, if the animals had it easier. They didn't have to hope, didn't have to imagine spring or Oregon or fresh water and safety. They just lived until they didn't. No guilt, no planning, no math. But you're not an ox. You don't get that peace. You carry on. Another horse dies the next day. You skin it without thinking, and it won't be the last. Canvas wasn't meant for this. Not for sleet, not for sleet's angry cousin, and definitely not for snow that feels like gravel raining sideways. But it's all you have. A wagon cover that flaps like a broken wing in every wind gust. A tent stitched from old sails and wagon cloth and some rope that's fraying faster than your nerves. You've tried patching holes with grease-soaked cloth, stuffing rags in corners, even holding up your own arms inside the flapping fabric just to keep the wind from turning your shelter into a parachute. It helps for about 10 seconds. Then the wind figures it out again. Tonight's storm is mean. Not big, not loud, just relentless. It starts with sleet that hits like someone throwing gravel, followed by thick snow that falls in chunks, not flakes. Your tent buckles under the weight before you even realize it's piling up. One of the ropes snaps, and the whole thing slumps sideways like a drunk giving up. You scramble out into the dark, snow already halfway up your shins, and you start digging with your hands because the shovel's under the wagon and you can't feel your fingers anyway. The others are dealing with the same chaos. You hear curses, whimpering, the occasional cry of pain as someone takes a spill on the ice. One woman throws a pot of stew she was cooking, just hurls it in frustration, letting it hiss into the snow. She collapses next to it, breathing hard, eyes wide. No one helps her up. Everyone's fighting their own battle. By morning, the camp looks like a battlefield. Tents sag or have collapsed entirely. Wagons lean on broken axles. The snow's up past your knees. You try to stand, and your legs shake like they're filled with sand. You haven't really slept. You just laid there and shook for a few hours, hoping not to die. And what's worse, you've got to do it all again tonight. Shelter failure is one of those overlooked killers on the trail. Most people picture blizzards or wolves or starvation, but sometimes it's just that your tent couldn't take it anymore. And once the canvas goes down, you're exposed to wind, sleet, and the kind of cold that stops being poetic and starts becoming lethal. Even brief exposure, just a few hours without real protection, can lead to hypothermia, pneumonia, or frostbite. Especially in children. And the children are the ones breaking your heart. They are quieter now. Not from maturity, not from bravery, just from fatigue. They cry less because crying takes energy. You watch one little girl crawl into a collapsed tent and curl into a ball, using her own coat as a pillow. She doesn't whimper, she just shivers, teeth clacking like wind chimes, eyes staring into nothing. Her mother tries to restake the tent, but the ground's frozen solid. The wooden stakes won't go in, and the ropes are stiff as tree branches. Someone offers up a metal pan as a snow shovel. They dig together, carving out a hole just deep enough to give the tent some shape again. It won't last the night. Everyone knows it. You wrap your own canvas tighter, checking the seams for tears. There's one near the back, probably from dragging it over brush weeks ago, and now the snow gets in there like a polite burglar, soft but steady. You press a wool scarf into the gap, then layer a coat over it, then your own body. If it keeps out 10% of the cold, that's a win. A fringe survival tip someone mentions in the night. Bury the tent, not just stake it. Dig a shallow pit, set the tent in it, and then use the snow itself as insulation. It sounds insane, but you try it. Your fingers go raw digging, but once you're in there, tucked beneath a crust of snow, it's not warm exactly, but less cold. You almost manage sleep. Almost. The storm lasts 2 days. By the end, you've lost 3 tents. One family is now sleeping directly under their wagon, which they've wrapped in every spare blanket and a layer of pine branches. Another has no choice but to pile into your already cramped canvas with you. You welcome them in without a word. The warmth from their bodies is more useful than the space you lose. Historically, wagons weren't designed for sleeping in, especially not for entire families in the winter. But once tents failed, that was the fallback. Some pioneers even modified their wagons with extra layers of canvas or wood, turning them into makeshift snow huts. Others buried the sides in snow to create an insulating barrier. It didn't always work. In one documented case, a wagon collapsed under the weight of wet snow while the family slept inside. Only one person crawled out. You think about that every time the roof of your wagon groans in the wind. The snow doesn't stop falling, it just shifts form. One day it's powder, the next it's hard-packed slush. It weighs more now. You can feel it in your arms every time you clear it off the tent, every time you shovel a path to the fire. Your back feels 10 years older. Your knees grind like rusty hinges. You've started keeping a stick with you, not for balance, but to tap the snow ahead of you. You're scared of falling into a hidden drift and not being able to climb out. One morning, a man wakes up with the tent collapsed entirely on top of him. No one noticed. He's lucky to be alive, but he looks dazed, like he's not sure whether he is. You pull him free, brush snow from his face, and lead him to the fire. He doesn't talk for the rest of the day. A tent doesn't seem like much. Just fabric, really. Rope, some wooden poles. But out here, it's your house, your body, your last line of defense. And every night it fails a little more. There's talk of building snow caves, hollowing out banks near the tree line and lining the insides with pine. The idea makes sense. Igloos exist for a reason, right? But no one's done it before. A few people try, you help dig. The snow is hard-packed but carvable. Inside, it's eerily quiet. You light a candle, and it doesn't even flicker. For the first time in days, the wind isn't chewing on your ears. You don't sleep in one that night, but you think you might soon. That night, your tent stays up, but you don't trust it. You lie there awake, listening to the wind test every seam like it's looking for a way in. Snow drifts up around the base, and you feel it crawling across your boots. You curl tighter, pressing your hands between your thighs to warm them, and you whisper out loud to no one, "Just hold together, please." No one answers. Not the wind, not the stars, not the tent. But it does, for now, and in the morning you're still here. It starts with a cough. Small, harmless, the kind that sounds like someone clearing their throat or breathing in the wrong way. But then it doesn't stop. You hear it again the next night. Louder, wet. Then 2 more people start, then 5. Then one of the children hacks into his blanket so hard he vomits. And that's when the dread settles in. Not the cold, not the hunger, not even the wolves. Illness. Winter's final weapon. The trail already beat your bodies down, peeled off layers of strength like bark off a tree. You're brittle, cracked, hollowed out by fatigue. Now, with sickness sweeping through the camp, you feel the structure begin to collapse from the inside. The girl in the wagon behind you can't keep food down. A man who was walking just yesterday now lies wrapped in every blanket he owns, sweating and shivering, mumbling about his mother. Another woman can't stop coughing blood into a scarf. She hides it at first. But you see, everyone sees. The fear isn't loud, it's subtle. People move farther apart at night. They pass food with their sleeves pulled down over their hands. No one says the word sick, because naming it feels like giving it permission. But it's spreading and there's no stopping it. You don't have medicine. No quinine, no opium tincture, no whiskey, strong enough to do more than burn your throat and maybe help you sleep through the worst of it. Historically, winter illness on the trail was as inevitable as frost. Pneumonia, influenza, tuberculosis. Any of them could end a life in days when you didn't have access to warmth, clean water, or real treatment. Children and elders were hit hardest, but no one was safe. Sometimes the cause wasn't even the cold, it was the overcrowding. Cramming 10 people into one canvas tent, breathing in the same stale, smoke-filled air, coughing into the same rags. You didn't just share shelter. You shared symptoms. There's a boy who loses his voice by noon and collapses in the snow by dusk. His father carries him to the fire, rocks him slowly. The boy's lips are blue. His chest rattles like broken glass. The next morning, there's just the sound of the wind and the silence where his breathing used to be. No one says anything. They just move around the spot where he died like it's holy ground. You start watching everyone too closely, looking for signs in their eyes, in their posture, in the colour of their cheeks. You're terrified of sneezing, of coughing, of waking up with your throat sore. One woman thinks her baby is just tired. You see the truth in the child's skin, too pale, too still. Later, the mother rocks her, softly humming something tuneless while the rest of the camp pretends not to hear the sound of a lullaby without a future. The fringe fact. In the most desperate moments, some travellers would place heated stones in wool socks and press them against sick children's feet, trying to draw warmth into their bodies through sheer belief. There's no science in it, no proven cure, but sometimes it worked. Or maybe the child was going to survive anyway. Or maybe people just needed to do something. You try it yourself when someone in your wagon starts coughing. She's young, barely 12. Her face is flushed and her breath comes in shallow gasps. You heat the stones as best you can, wrap them in scraps of flannel and tuck them against her feet. You whisper encouragement you don't believe, and she stares at you like she's already halfway gone. That night the wind doesn't howl, it whispers, like it's listening in, like it's judging. She makes it to morning, but she's weaker. One man in the group claims to have herbal knowledge, taught by his grandmother back east. He steeps pine needles, wild mint, even a little willow bark into a tea. He says it'll break the fever. You try some. It tastes bitter and hopeful. You offer it to the sick girl. She drinks half and drifts into a dreamless sleep. There's still debate among historians over whether herbal remedies on the trail actually saved lives or simply prolonged suffering. Diaries mention them often. Willow bark tea, spruce needle poultices, mustard seed baths. But it's unclear if they truly worked or were just the placebo of a world with no alternatives. Either way, when someone hands you a steaming mug of anything hot, you drink it like it's life itself. The problem is that the sick can't work. They don't gather firewood, they don't push wagons or hunt or carry water. And so the burden shifts, more weight on fewer shoulders, and those shoulders are already bending. You make camp early that night because half the group can't go on. The tents go up slowly, shovels scraping through snow packed hard as granite. You huddle near the fire, passing around stew that tastes more like ash than food. No one's talking, no one's singing. You're all too busy counting how many coughs you hear per minute. And the trail doesn't stop. That's the cruelest part. Nature doesn't pause for pity. The snow falls the same way. The wind keeps its schedule. The miles still stretch ahead, indifferent and unmoved. You think about how illness isn't even a character in this story, just another tool the trail uses to thin the numbers. You go to bed that night with 2 people gone, one you liked, one you didn't know, doesn't matter anymore. You lie next to the sick girl again, wrapping her in every blanket you have, and you hold your breath when she wheezes in hers. You think about your own lungs. They're fine. For now, you try to keep them that way, but you know the truth. Out here, you don't get sick and recover. You get sick and hope you don't die. It's not the death that gets you. It's the waiting, the knowledge that someone is dying right there beside you, and there's nothing you can do but watch time wear them down. And when they finally go, it's not like in the stories. No peaceful smile, no last breath whispered into a loved one's ear. It's quiet, raw and cruel. Sometimes it happens in the middle of the night and no one notices until morning. Other times it's long and drawn out, the final breath coming only after hours of rattling misery that keeps everyone awake and hollowed out. Then comes the question, what do we do with the body? You can't bury them, not properly. The ground is stone, frozen so hard the shovel might as well be a spoon. The first time you try, you swing the tool down and it bounces back with a jolt that nearly dislocates your wrist. Someone brings a pickaxe, but after an hour you've barely made a dent. The frost wins, so you compromise. You dig as much as you can, maybe a shallow groove in the snow. You place the body there, cover it with rocks and branches. Sometimes you wrap it in a tarp if there's one to spare. Other times, you don't. You mark the spot with a cross or a pile of stones. That's it. No sermons, no prayers. You just nod, turn away, and keep walking. But that's when a new problem begins. The bodies start piling up. You don't talk about it out loud, but everyone's noticed. Every few days now there's another. Maybe it's the illness, maybe frostbite led to infection, or maybe they just gave up. Whatever the cause, the result is the same. A corpse you have no proper place to put, and the ground isn't getting any softer. Historically, frozen burials were one of the worst psychological burdens faced by winter travellers. The inability to honour the dead, already stripped of dignity by starvation or sickness, was a final blow to morale. Bodies were sometimes left behind with markers, or even stored under snow to be buried properly in spring. But more often, they were hidden out of sight, covered, forgotten, not because people didn't care, but because they had to. Survival demanded forgetting. You discover that some have started dragging the bodies off the trail at night. A quiet ritual now, no words, no ceremony. Just 2 people lifting the weight and carrying it away from camp. You watch it happen from the edge of your firelight once, the pale outline of a body swaying between them like a hammock full of stone. You say nothing. There's a man in your group who insists on carving initials into trees for every person lost. You admire the sentiment, but even he starts running out of energy. After the 7th carving, his hands shake so badly he can't hold the knife. He wraps it back in cloth and just sits there. That night, no new initials appear. A fringe tradition someone mentions, whispered, probably apocryphal, is that in some wagon trains, people would weigh the dead down with their own iron cookpots or tools, not to honour them, but to keep scavengers away. Wolves, coyotes, whatever else might come sniffing when the wind carried the scent of rot through the trees. You don't ask what happens to the cookpots afterward. You hope no one is using them again. Then there's the matter of space. The wagons are overloaded, the animals fewer, and the idea of carrying a body for any length of time becomes impossible. One family tries, wraps their father in a quilt, lays him in the wagon bed, and says they'll bury him properly when they find softer ground. But after 3 days, the smell begins to bloom. They stop talking. By the 4th day, he's gone, quietly removed during a night storm. No one asks when. Everyone knows why. The worst of it comes during a particularly brutal evening. The wind is slicing in sideways, and tents are collapsing one after the other. A small girl, barely walking age, is found frozen under her blanket, face blue, eyes half open. Her parents sit beside her for hours, motionless, rocking in silence while the rest of you pretend you don't notice. In the morning, she's wrapped up and carried away. You don't see where, you don't ask. That day, no one speaks until the sun is high. There's debate among scholars over whether the Oregon Trail was more lethal due to disease or weather, but they often ignore the psychological cost of burial failure, the burden of having to leave someone behind, exposed, unfinished. Diaries from survivors describe the horror of animals digging up graves in spring, of recognizing clothing or hair, of finding initials carved into trees beside shallow mounds of disturbed earth. You wonder if any of the stones you've stepped over in the past week were graves. You wonder if you'll get one of your own. Another body today, an older woman who hadn't spoken in 2 days. She simply lay down and didn't get back up. You helped carry her, stiff and silent, to a spot near a grove of pines. You laid her down, placed a few stones and walked away, but you turned back once, just once, and the wind caught the edge of her shawl, making it flutter like she was waving goodbye. There's a dark joke making its way around camp now. Die too soon and you freeze. Die too late and you rot. No one laughs. Not really, but it's something to say, and sometimes even gallows humour feels like a blanket. You lie awake that night thinking about how easy it is to lose a name out here. How quickly a person becomes the man from the red wagon, or the girl with the cough. You tell yourself you'll remember them, all of them, but you're not sure you will. Memory is slippery when your brain is trying not to freeze. A few people have started sleeping with knives tucked under their blankets, not for defence, not really. Just in case things get darker than they already are. You pretend not to notice, you don't ask questions, and you write names in the snow with a stick, just once, then let the wind erase them. Because out here, forgetting isn't cruel, it's survival. You'd think snow would be soft. That's how it looks in paintings. Gentle, fluffy, powder white. But that's not the snow you're dealing with. No, this snow is a liar. It hides things, swallows things, and sometimes it doesn't just cover the trail, it becomes the trail until you don't know where solid ground ends and a trap begins. It starts with a wheel disappearing. 1 second, the wagon's rolling. The next, it lurches sideways with a sickening crunch, and you hear the axle snap like a bone. You rush over, and it takes a second to register what you're seeing. The entire front end has sunk into what looked like a smooth patch of snow. A drift. 3 feet deep, maybe more. The oxen panic, bucking and bellowing, and one slips hard, leg twisting beneath it. You unhook the yoke as fast as you can while the driver screams for help. It takes 2 hours to dig the wagon out. Everyone's freezing, shouting, slipping. You use planks to create a ramp, roll boulders into place as leverage, and pry the thing up inch by miserable inch. By the time it's free, the injured ox can't stand anymore. Another bullet, another body in the snow, and you're not even halfway through the pass. Drifts, it turns out, are silent killers. You can't tell how deep they are until it's too late. They form in gullies around trees, even in the middle of flatland, especially where wind funnels between the mountains. The snow piles up in deceptive waves, looking harmless. Then they collapse under pressure, swallowing feet, wagons, and sometimes entire animals. You've heard stories now whispered at campfires of wagons completely vanishing into snow. People left with nothing but the breath in their lungs and the clothes they were wearing. You thought you were prepared, thought you were clever with your poking sticks and your careful footsteps. But snowdrifts don't care, and you learn that lesson every time the trail throws one under your boots. There's one moment, a bad one, when a child disappears, just gone. You're walking through a narrow pass when you hear a sharp whoop and a thud. The mother spins around, starts screaming. You all stop, turn, scan the ground, but there's nothing. Just white. Someone finds a glove, then a hole, you start digging, fast, furious. Desperate. 5, 10, 15 minutes of scraping snow like your hands are claws. Finally, someone reaches fabric. The child is alive somehow, curled up, wide-eyed, soaked but breathing. You carry them out like treasure. That night no one lets go of their kids. You begin tying ropes around people's waists during narrow crossings, like you're scaling a mountain, except it's just walking. Walking on what might not be there. One person leads, prodding the trail with a sharpened branch, while the others follow like ghosts tethered to a world that doesn't want them. Historically, snowdrifts weren't just inconvenient. They were lethal. Wagons lost to drifts could rarely be recovered. Supplies frozen under feet of snow might as well be on the moon. Pioneers learned to look for subtle clues, wind patterns, smooth patches where it shouldn't be smooth, too much snow clustered behind boulders. Even then, the smartest travellers fell through. The ground couldn't be trusted. One woman in your group loses a boot to a drift, just sinks down and pulls back a bare foot. She tries to dig it out, but the snow's already packed tight. In 5 minutes, the leather is gone. She wraps her foot in a scarf and keeps walking. It's black by nightfall. No one says the word frostbite. You all know, the fringe trick someone offers. Drag a bundle of brush behind you like a sled. If it starts to dip or disappear into a drift, stop. Test the snow before stepping forward. It works, for a day. Then the brush vanishes completely into a hole, and you realise it's all just guesswork. One day you cross a flat stretch that feels wrong. There's no snow on the trees, the wind's still, and the trail ahead seems oddly level. You pause, squint, then take a detour. Just a few feet off to the side. The person behind you doesn't. They sink straight to their waist, scream, then drop to their shoulders. You grab a rope, throw it, miss, throw again. They catch it. You pull. The snow resists like wet cement. Finally, they're free, soaked to the bone, gasping, coughing. They lose a mitten in the struggle, and something in their eyes changes. They don't speak for the rest of the day. By now, you all walk differently. Shorter steps, eyes down, sticks tapping constantly. You start treating the trail like it's alive, like it wants to pull you under, and maybe it does. Maybe the land remembers every person who tried and failed, and wants to add your bones to the collection. There's debate, of course. Did pioneers really fall into drifts and disappear forever? Some scholars think that's just folklore, but others point to records, diary entries describing wagons lost to sudden sinkholes, or entire teams of oxen collapsing into what turned out to be snow-covered marsh. It might sound dramatic, but out here, drama is just survival in the worst lighting. The snow changes texture again. It's wetter now, heavier. It clings to your legs like wet cloth freezing as it melts. You stop every hour to scrape it off, and you swear the trail is steeper, even though the map says this should be a plateau. The wagon ruts are slanted. The trees tilt slightly. Your legs burn. And that's when it happens. Your wagon hits a drift and tips. It doesn't shatter, just leans hard and groans, the back wheel caught in snow so deep you can't even see the hub. The oxen panic again, and one goes down hard. You shout, trying to unhitch the team, but your gloves are wet and your fingers barely work. Someone runs in with a knife and cuts the harness free. The wagon creaks, lurches again, and then settles. Everything inside is a mess. Blankets soaked, beans spilled, a jar of molasses broken. You sit there staring at the damage like it's personal, and it is. Because the snow didn't just take your supplies, it took your confidence, and you don't have much of that left. You camp there that night. Too cold, too tired to go farther. You lean your back against the wagon's good wheel and stare at the stars overhead, wondering how something can be so beautiful and so uncaring at the same time. You tell yourself, tomorrow we'll dig it out. But deep down, you're starting to wonder if the snow is digging in too. There's a certain point where jokes stop being jokes. You know the moment. It slips in quietly without fanfare. Someone says something dark around the fire, half laughing, and no one responds. No chuckles, no smirks, just that slow, sideways glance that says, "We've all thought it. That's where you are now." The campfire talk has turned, and somewhere in between frostbite and starvation, the C word has made its entrance: cannibalism. You hear it first from the back of the group, whispered low but just loud enough to carry. Someone's describing the Donner Party, Like it's a cautionary tale, but also, let's be honest, a possible preview. They say it started with the old ones, the ones who were already dying. Nobody was killed, just used. Recycled. And everyone nods, not because they approve, but because they understand. It's been weeks since any of you ate anything that tasted like food. Your rations are gone, your animals are gone, and the snowstorm that passed through yesterday buried any remaining chance of foraging. Even the trees seem empty. The squirrels are gone. Not hibernating, gone. You haven't seen a bird in days. The woods are quiet in a way that makes your skin crawl. Today, someone brought back a raccoon. Everyone swarmed it like it was a deer. It barely made a meal for one person, let alone 12. You boiled the bones. They turned to mush. You scraped the inside of the skull with a spoon and shared the gelatinous goo like it was caviar. You could still feel it sliding down your throat 3 hours later. So when someone says, if it comes to it, we'd make it quick, nobody stops them. Historically, cannibalism on the Oregon Trail wasn't common, but it wasn't unheard of either, especially in winter. The Donner Party is the most infamous, of course, but there were others, smaller groups that didn't survive to write memoirs or get their own chapter in textbooks. Some of them disappeared entirely. Others were found in spring, bones stripped, fires still half burnt, names never confirmed. What makes it worse is the knowing, the awareness that this line exists, and once you cross it, there's no uncrossing. You've started noticing how people look at the sick now, not with pity, not with the soft worry that once hovered in their eyes. It's something different, calculating, practical, cold. One man has been bedridden for days, fevered, silent, barely breathing. No one said it, but you know what they're all waiting for. He's not moving, he's not getting better, and he's taking up space, using blankets, using firewood, using hope. That night, a quiet vote is taken. Not about killing, not yet, just about what if he dies, if there's no other food, if it's between his body and the next child wasting away. The silence that follows is the loudest thing you've ever heard. The fringe fact one traveller remembers and dares to speak aloud. Supposedly, meat from the thighs and back contains the most calories. That's what the stories say anyway. You don't know whether to believe him, but you do notice no one corrects him. You lie awake that night, wrapped in every inch of warmth you can scavenge, the fire casting long skeletal shadows on the wagon wheels. You can hear breathing, so much breathing, ragged, thin, shivering sounds. One person coughs until they pass out, another mumbles in their sleep, calling out to someone who's probably already dead, and all you can think is, please don't let it come to that. But what's that? Eating or dying? Or being the one left behind, left with the choice? In the morning, the sick man is still alive. Barely. His wife cries with relief. You watch people glance at one another, some genuine, some less so. But it doesn't matter. He made it another day. So did you. The line, though, is thinner now, more frayed. To distract yourselves, some of you build a windbreak, a low wall of snow stacked like bricks, curved around the fire to block the worst of the wind. It doesn't help much, but it gives your hands something to do. You talk about anything else, anything. One man swears he saw bear tracks. Another insists he once rode an elk. Someone even tells a story about kissing a girl with 3 thumbs. You laugh, but the sound is brittle, like ice cracking on a window pane. Later you dig into the side of a snowbank to make another shelter. Not a tent, just a hollow, shaped like a coffin. You sleep in it that night, curled tight, using your own breath to warm the air, and still, your toes don't thaw. There's an argument near midnight. You don't hear all the words, just shouting, then silence. Then the unmistakable sound of someone vomiting. Someone's accused another of stealing rations, an old bit of dried apple hidden beneath a bedroll. It doesn't matter whether it's true. Trust breaks in this kind of cold, and once broken, it's hard to glue back together with fingers this numb. Some historians argue that cannibalism is a myth, an exaggeration for drama, for warning, for sensationalism. Others argue the opposite, that it happened more than we know, but shame kept it buried. And out here, you understand that argument, because that shame doesn't matter when your ribs feel like they're slicing you from the inside. That evening, someone walks away from camp. Not far, just to the edge of the trees. They sit down, cross-legged, facing away. They don't come back. You find them in the morning, frozen like a statue, their hands open like they were waiting for something. The frost has clung to their eyelashes. and their face looks peaceful. You bury them under rocks. Someone starts to say, "We can't afford to," and stops. No one wants to finish the sentence. Instead, you gather what little fuel remains and build the biggest fire you've had in days. You don't eat that day, not out of reverence, out of fear. Because now, when someone dies, everyone notices how fresh they are. That night, you dream of warmth, of full plates, of food you can't even name anymore. You wake up chewing your own tongue. You're still human, but you're not sure for how much longer. There it is, the pass. You don't even realize it at first. It looks like any other stretch of frozen trail. Grey sky above, snow-slick earth below, trees leaning in like eavesdropping strangers, but then someone points it out, a hand barely lifting from under their blanket. "That's the summit," they say, voice flat. And suddenly it hits you. You're standing at the bottom of the final major crossing, the one you were supposed to clear months ago, the one everyone said you had to reach before snow, before winter, before death got too comfortable. You're already late, and now you're staring at a mountain with a face full of ice. The first thing you notice is the wind. It comes screaming down the slopes like it knows your name, like it's been waiting for this moment all season. You shield your face, but it still finds every gap in your clothing burrowing in like a cold parasite. The snow underfoot isn't snow anymore. It's ice, crusted and refrozen over and over. Your boots slip, your ankles twist, and you grab for trees that snap in your hands. This pass wasn't supposed to be closed yet. According to the maps, useless, laughable things at this point, you should have already descended the western slope, making camp in a mild valley with game to hunt and rivers that didn't try to kill you. Instead, you're staring up a frozen chute carved by wind and time, knowing full well that if you don't get over this now, tonight, you'll be trapped on the wrong side of the world. You go. The oxen barely move. The surviving few are rail-thin and shaking, driven more by noise than reason. One slips not 30 yards in and goes down on its knees, nostrils flaring. Someone tries to lift it, but there's no strength left in anyone. You unhook the yoke, push the wagon up with hands and knees and keep going. You don't cry, you don't shout, you just grunt and drag and lean into the mountain like it's trying to push you back into your grave. Historically, passes like these, South Pass, Blue Mountains, the Cascades, were the final crucibles. Some travellers never made it over. They waited for rescue, thinking maybe another wagon train would come. It didn't. Others tried to ride out the season at lower elevations, but winter always chased them down. Only a few, the strongest or the luckiest, pushed over the top through ice and exhaustion and somehow stumbled into spring on the other side. There's a phrase someone says under their breath: snow tomb. You wish you hadn't heard it. The climb takes hours. You have no sense of time anymore. You just move. When you stop to rest, you lie flat on your back and look up at the swirling grey overhead. The snow doesn't fall so much as drift. Slowly, endlessly, like ash from a fire you can't see. You wonder if this is what purgatory looks like. Just you and this mountain and a wagon that creaks like a dying animal. At one point, someone collapses in the snow and doesn't get back up. You approach. Their face is pale, their breath shallow. You know this look. You know what comes next. But there's no room to stop, no room to mourn, and someone carries their pack, someone else pulls their sled. You leave the body where it fell. You'll remember it later, maybe, or maybe not. Midway up the pass, the trail disappears completely. Wind has swept it clean, leaving a slick slope where footing is a fantasy. You fall. Others fall. One man slides 20 feet and nearly takes another wagon with him. You form a human chain, gripping rope, using pickaxes and walking sticks to anchor yourselves into the crust. It's barely working. You dig steps into the snow with your frozen hands, fingers numb and purple. The fringe method someone recalls is to cut pine boughs and lay them down like makeshift traction mats. You do it. It's slow. It eats your energy. But it works. One wagon makes it over a ridge, then another, then a third gets stuck between two outcroppings, and the oxen panic again. They lurch sideways, and the wagon tips. You hear something snap, wood or bone, you don't know. And then the wagon's on its side, sliding. You scramble to stop it. You fail. It tumbles down 30 feet and lands in a ravine with a sound you'll never forget. Supplies gone, canvas shredded. A family's life reduced to shattered wood and scattered tinware. No one speaks, you just stare. Then you turn and keep climbing. You reach the top near nightfall, or at least what you think is the top. It's hard to say. The wind's worse up here, howling like it's furious you made it this far. Your ears are numb, your teeth ache, you can't feel your face. One woman falls to her knees and starts laughing. Not joy, madness. A man beside her slaps her once, hard, and she stops. Just like that. You keep moving. There's a rock at the summit, flat and wide, half covered in frost. Someone wipes it clean and carves a name into it with the tip of a knife. Then another name, then another. You join them. It feels right. Like leaving part of yourself behind. Because honestly, part of you isn't coming down this mountain. There's debate among historians about whether travellers who died in the mountain passes were more likely to be buried or simply left. Some say they were carefully laid in snow shelters, bodies preserved for spring burial. Others insist that time and energy were too precious, that in winter the best you could hope for was to die in one piece and not get blown off a cliff by the wind. Tonight you make camp just below the summit. There's barely room for the tents. No firewood, no animals left to provide warmth. You huddle with your group under one tarp, sharing body heat like scared animals. Your skin sticks to the canvas from condensation. The cold makes every movement feel like dragging iron. You listen to the wind. It sounds like it's whispering names. You don't sleep. You rest your eyes and pretend. And in the morning, you begin the descent. Carefully, slowly, because one wrong step now doesn't just mean a fall. It means you become part of the mountain. You start going down, and the going down is somehow worse than the going up. Gravity, that old companion, is no longer your friend. It drags at your heels, pulls at your wagon, and turns every misstep into a possible disaster. You'd think descending would be easier, less strain, less effort, but the snow is slick, the trail barely exists, and your legs tremble from exhaustion before you've taken your first dozen steps. Downhill on ice with no strength left. It's a recipe for disappearing. You take it slow, step by careful step, boots slipping even with every ounce of your weight pressed into them. Someone ahead of you drops to all fours and starts crawling. No shame anymore, only strategy. You do the same a few minutes later, when your knees start buckling beneath you. The wagons creak and groan with every inch of progress. You tie ropes around the axles, wrapping them around tree trunks to slow the descent. It works, until it doesn't. One rope snaps with a loud whip crack and the wagon lunges forward like it's been spooked. It skids, smashes into a rock and throws two people off their feet. No one's seriously hurt, but the sideboard splits and you lose a sack of beans. The beans bounce down the slope like marbles, vanishing into the white. You consider chasing them. Then you remember your legs barely work, and you don't even like beans that much. The air down here is different, wetter somehow. It makes the cold cling to your skin like a wet sheet. You're sweating under your layers, but the moment the breeze hits you, that sweat freezes solid. Your clothes stiffen, and suddenly every joint feels like it's wrapped in steel wire. One of the teenagers in your group starts to cry. Not loudly, just a soft, steady stream of tears that turn to ice before they finish rolling down her cheeks. Her mother holds her, but doesn't say anything. You don't have the words either. And then there's the boy. He was at the back of the line, holding a walking stick, picking his way down slow. He'd slipped once, twice, caught himself, both times. The third time there was no sound, just the absence of it. Like someone muted the world for a second. You turned around and he was gone. You run back up the trail yelling his name. No answer. Just wind. You search for an hour, two, maybe more. You find a glove. You find drag marks in the snow that disappear over a ledge. You never find the boy. You mark a tree near where he vanished, carving his initials deep into the bark. It feels useless. It feels like breathing into the void. This descent becomes something else. A pilgrimage of silence. No one talks anymore unless they have to. The wind does the talking. It moans through the trees, howls across open stretches, whistles through broken wagon wheels and cracked tent poles. You start to hear things in it, names, voices, memories. You know it's your mind playing tricks on you. You still listen. There's a debate, quiet, late one night, about turning back, about going around, about waiting out the weather, but no one really believes in those options. Around doesn't exist anymore. Back is dead. Waiting is death in another form. So you keep moving forward because that's what people do when there's no other direction left. Historically, the descent from passes was just as fatal as the climb. Many pioneers died within sight of the valley floor. Slips, falls, overturned wagons, crushed limbs, broken spines. Some made it all the way to the edge of safety only to fall asleep in a snowbank and never wake up. The cold is cruelest when you're closest to warmth. It lulls you into thinking you've made it. And then it strikes. You pass the remains of another group near the halfway point. Tents collapsed, wagons splintered, and what looks like a grave marked with a pair of crossed snowshoes. No names, just the ruins of someone else's failure. Someone adds a branch to the pile, a small gesture. You all nod, then keep moving. A fringe fact someone mutters to fill the silence. In ancient Siberia, people believed snow-covered mountains were the mouths of sleeping gods. If you made too much noise, you'd wake them, and they'd eat you whole. You want to laugh at that. You almost do. But then you remember the boy, and the snow that swallowed him. By the third day of descent, you're all delirious. One man starts mumbling about hearing music, a violin maybe. He hums a tune no one recognizes. The next morning he's gone. You find him sitting in the snow, smiling, eyes closed, frozen stiff, fingers blue. The violin song is still playing in your head. You make camp that night beneath a rocky outcrop. No fire, no food, just bodies curled into shapes that vaguely resemble people. You've run out of curses, of prayers, of songs. All that's left is breathing. One breath at a time. And dreams, those still come. You dream of oranges, of laughter, of a warm porch and a summer rain. You dream of your father's voice telling you to come inside before it gets dark. You wake up to darkness anyway, and you keep moving. You finally spot the edge of the tree line on the fourth day. That's when you know you're close. Lower elevation, shelter, maybe even game. You feel it before you see it. A kind of heaviness lifting, just a little, just enough. And that's when your body betrays you. Your knees buckle, your vision blurs. You collapse in the snow and realize you're burning up. Fever. It hits like a hammer. Someone pulls you up. You're not sure who. You remember a voice, soft, cracked, saying, "Not now, not after all this." They half carry, half drag you down the last stretch. You don't remember much after that, just the sound of your own breath. And then the air changes. You smell pine, wet earth, smoke. There's a cabin, small, half buried, but real, and firelight flickers through the cracks in the window. Someone knocks, no answer. They knock again, then the door opens, and just like that the mountain lets go, but the scars? Those are staying. You don't remember going inside. You remember being outside, barely upright, barely breathing, and then it all blurs. Later, much later, someone tells you they dragged you in like a sack of potatoes and dropped you near the hearth. You believe them. Your body still feels like a bag of rocks, heavy in all the wrong places, hollow in all the rest. The warmth hurts. That's the first thing you register. Not comfort, pain, because after weeks of cold seeping into your bones, the heat feels like needles, pricking your toes, stabbing your fingertips, lighting up your face with bursts of fire beneath your skin. It's good pain, someone says. It means you're not dead. You nod. You want to believe them. The cabin isn't big. 4 walls, a low roof, a stone fireplace, and a floor made of warped boards that creak like they resent your presence. It smells like pine smoke, wet wool, and something vaguely medicinal, juniper maybe. Or something that used to be food a long time ago. There's no one here. Whoever built this place either died long ago or left before the snow took hold. You don't care. It has walls, it has shelterstable. That's enough to make it a palace. Your group trickles in over hours. Not all at once, not everyone makes it. Some are missing. One person arrives with blood on their sleeve. Frostbitten fingers burst open. Another has to be carried, delirious and mumbling about spring. Someone brought in a child wrapped tight in furs. The child doesn't speak, just stares. You all settle into corners, huddling close, moving slow as if the room itself might vanish if you push too hard. Someone builds a fire. The hearth is black with years of soot, but it holds. There's even a bit of old wood stacked in the corner, dry, split, a miracle. You burn it immediately. No questions, no debate. Later you'll figure out what to do next. For now, you sit in a circle like cavemen, silent and blinking, the light dancing on your wrecked faces. But the truth is already sinking in. Help isn't coming. There are no supply wagons, no patrols, no cheerful rescue parties wearing clean coats and carrying baskets of bread. It's January, or maybe it's still December. The calendar gave up weeks ago. Whatever the date, you know what it means. The forts are snowed in, the passes behind you are impassable, and any settlements ahead are either shuttered or empty. You're on your own. Still. Historically, winter rescue on the Oregon Trail was rare. Occasionally a party would make it to Fort Boise or Fort Hall and send help backward. but the sheer distance, the terrain and the weather meant that help might take weeks, months even, to arrive. In the deep snow, most people were forced to bunker down wherever they could and pray their supplies outlasted the season. Your supplies are gone. You do an inventory the second day. One person has half a sack of flour. Another has jerky so hard it could double as if it a weapon. Someone else finds a sealed jar of pickled onions. You eat them first, partly because they're fresh, partly because they're acidic enough to wake up your tongue. The next night you split a soup made from melted snow and whatever you could scrape from the bottom of a biscuit tin. You've stopped expecting to feel full. Now you just hope to feel not empty. The cabin offers structure, yes, but not security. The roof leaks in one corner. The windows have no glass, just slats and patches of old cloth. The wind gets in anyway. One person tears apart a canvas tent and nails it over the largest gap. You're grateful, but you also watch the last of your canvas disappear with a knot in your stomach. That was your backup shelter. Your last layer. Gone now. You take turns sleeping by the fire. No one dares hog it all night. Someone invents a schedule dividing the warmest spot into shifts. You sit on the floor during yours, legs pulled to your chest, watching embers swirl like ghosts. Every creak outside makes you tense. The wind sounds like footsteps, or breathing, or worse, like someone whispering your name. Someone else claims they heard something in the woods last night. Not animals, voices, human ones. You scoff at first, but then you lie awake thinking about it. What if it was another group? What if it was help? What if it was something else? The fringe fact is that some winter trail survivors reported hearing phantom sounds in the forest. Music, footsteps, even laughter. Some wrote about it in their journals, attributing it to spirits or madness, or some form of divine punishment. Modern experts suggest it was hallucination, starvation mixed with isolation. But out here, even hallucinations leave tracks in the snow. On the third day in the cabin, someone dies. It's quiet, peaceful even. He was sick already from before the mountain, just never came back from it. He slips away while sleeping, wrapped in buffalo hide he once traded for sugar. Now it's just you and the hide. And the question, do we bury him? The ground outside is stone, no shovels, no spare energy. So you wrap him tighter, place him in the woodshed, cover him with snow, say a few words, not prayers really, just memories. He made good coffee. He fixed my boots. He didn't deserve this. Nobody does. The debate among historians is whether trail survivors during winter grew numb to death, or whether each loss still carved them open, just more quietly. Based on how your people move now, heads down, hands busy, silence reigning, you'd argue the latter. It still hurts. You just don't have the strength to show it. Each morning a new task. Patch a hole, melt snow, boil soup, scrape lichen from tree bark and hope it doesn't taste too bitter. Each day is just a sequence of distractions between long periods of waiting. Waiting for spring, waiting for food, waiting for something to change. It doesn't. One day a man in your group says, "If we don't leave soon, we're not leaving at all." No one answers him, because deep down you know it's true. But you also know, to leave now would mean going back into that snow. To leave means dying on your feet instead of on your back, and nobody's ready to make that choice yet. Not yet. The sun finally comes out and it feels wrong, just like someone flipped the wrong switch on the sky. It's too bright, too cheerful. After weeks of grey, you'd think you'd welcome it. Fall to your knees in the slumber like some old-time prophet touched by a miracle. But no, this light exposes things you'd rather not see. The filth on your clothes, the rot in your fingers, the hollowed cheeks of the people around you, the half-frozen bodies stacked in the woodshed. The truth. And worse, it turns the snow to glass. That's the thing no one warns you about. When the snow melts just a little under the winter sun and refreezes again by nightfall, it becomes an ice rink, not the smooth kind. This is jagged, uneven, full of hidden pits and ridges where wagon wheels once were. Now, every step is a gamble. The ground is waiting, watching. If it had a face, it would smirk. You leave the cabin just after dawn to fetch water. Ice, really, chipped from the edge of the creek that still runs beneath the crust. Your boots slip with every step, and your walking stick becomes less of a tool and more of a lifeline. You inch your way down the slope, each foot placed with reverence, like the snow might open up and swallow you whole. You fall once, then again. The second time you land hard on your elbow and bite your tongue. You taste blood and the metallic edge of failure. Back at the cabin, the others are already awake, hunched over the fire like it owes them something. Someone's trying to fry a bit of bark in bacon grease. Another is melting snow over a candle stub. The pot is cracked, but it still holds water. You sit by the wall and don't say anything. No one does anymore unless it's important. That morning, a man tries to leave, not escape, just move forward. He says he can't stay here another day. Says he'd rather take his chances on foot, head west, find help. No one argues. No one volunteers to go with him either. He takes a blanket, a knife, and a bag of crushed hardtack someone was hoarding under their cot. He doesn't say goodbye. You watch from the window, what used to be a window anyway, as he walks into the light. He slips within 10 paces, gets back up, slips again. Eventually, he disappears between the trees. You never see him again. Historically, midwinter departures from snowed-in camps almost never succeeded. The ice made every step dangerous, and the temperatures at elevation remained sub-zero. Without snowshoes or a sled team, walkers burned more calories than they consumed, and typically collapsed within a day or two. Their bodies were often found in spring, curled up mittenless, covered and hid in a dusting of frost. Some were never found at all. Inside the cabin, someone has a broken ankle. Fell going to the latrine 2 nights ago. Their leg is swollen, red and hot to the touch. Fever's setting in. The room smells like infection now. You know the smell. Like copper and sweat and wood smoke, all fighting for dominance. There's no medicine, just a bottle of whiskey. You pour a capful into their mouth and hope they sleep through whatever happens next. The fire crackles, too loud in the silence. Someone feeds it with a plank from the bunk. You look away. That was your seat. The fringe detail someone mutters, because there's always one, is that native tribes in the north once fashioned spikes from frozen urine to hunt small animals. You don't know if it's true, and you don't ask how they know it. But it says something about where your collective minds are now. You're not on the trail anymore. You're deep in the realm of improvisation, desperation, and wild, bizarre trivia that might be your only tool for staying sane. That night, the ice claims someone else. A woman, maybe 30, slips going outside to relieve herself. It's just 10 steps away. She never makes it back. Someone finds her in the morning, with her neck twisted at a wrong angle, and her boots half buried in a drift. You carry her body to the woodshed. No one cries. There's no ceremony. You just nod at each other. That's the closest thing you have to a funeral now. You spend the next day inside, too afraid of the ice to leave. The cabin reeks of everything: smoke, mold, blood, grief. Your breath clouds the air. You wipe frost from the walls. The glass jar you used to store snow water has cracked from the cold. You find a piece of it in your blanket, a tiny shard of nothing that cuts your thumb just enough to bleed. You suck on it like candy. You dream of sapping, over and over again, falling down an endless white slope, tumbling, flailing, and then landing, always with a snap. You wake with your teeth clenched and your hands balled into fists. Someone across the room is moaning in their sleep. You pretend not to hear. There's debate among historians about how many injuries on the trail were due to ice rather than cold itself. Slips led to broken bones, which led to immobility, which led to death. But records are vague. Death certificates weren't a thing out here. You die, someone remembers your name, or they don't. Your story ends quietly, and the snow keeps falling. Someone finally cracks and screams at the fire. Just screams. A full-throated, guttural roar that fills the cabin like thunder. Everyone flinches. The screamer throws a tin cup into the wall. Then he sobs, hard. He says, "We're gonna die here," over and over again. No one tells him he's wrong. You all know he's probably right. Later that night, the ice storm hits. You thought you'd seen everything winter could throw at you. You were wrong. Rain falls, but it freezes before it hits the ground. The entire world turns to glass. Trees groan, limbs snap. The roof starts leaking again. Ice slams against the canvas-covered windows like thrown stones. You all brace the walls with your bodies, praying they hold. You hear a loud crack outside. A tree has fallen, maybe more than one. You stay awake all night. When the sun rises, the forest is crystalline. Beautiful, yes, but deadly. Everything sparkles like it's covered in diamonds, but every step outside is a risk. You walk like you're made of paper. The trees moan under the weight. One wrong move and the world could shatter on top of you. Someone suggests building crampons, hooks for your boots, from bent nails, twisted wire, anything. You try. They kind of work. You can at least walk to the creek without falling. Progress. but inside the ankle infection has spread. The man is delirious now. He thinks he's still on the plains. He asks for his mother, then for pie, then for mercy. By nightfall he's gone. Another trip to the woodshed, another addition to the silence. The snow has stopped, but the ice remains. And for now, so do you. It starts with a sound, low, distant, rhythmic. Not quite footsteps, not quite wind. You're outside, chipping ice off a bucket, and you pause mid-swing, head tilted. There it is again, crunch, pause, crunch. Maybe it's just a tree groaning, or snow shifting, but your body doesn't believe that. Your skin prickles, your gut tightens, something's watching. You turn, scan the tree line. Nothing, but you feel it. Something just out of sight. Something hungry. The animals that hunt the dying, the ones you heard about in stories but thought only lived in books or the bad corners of childhood memory. Wolves, mountain lions, scavengers with patience. You haven't seen them until now because they know how to wait. They don't strike the strong, they follow the slow, the broken, the half gone. And you're easy to follow now. The first confirmed sighting comes the next night. A howl in the distance, long and eerie, rising over the treetops like a warning. Someone bolts upright inside the cabin. The rest of you freeze. Then a second howl answers from farther off. Then a third. The sound echoes around the valley, and you swear the trees themselves lean back in fear. No one sleeps much after that. Historically, predator attacks on wagon trains were rare. Wolves and big cats preferred easier meals, but in deep winter, after snow buried their prey and rivers froze over, hunger changed the equation. Wolves would follow a group from a distance, waiting for someone to drop behind. Sometimes a child, sometimes a weak adult. Sometimes they didn't even wait for death. There are accounts, hushed ones, of people dragged from tents or ambushed near the tree line. Never found again except for blood in the snow and a missing coat. You find tracks the next morning. Large, fresh, circling the cabin. Someone counted 4 sets, maybe more. They are wide, deep, sharp at the edges. Not human. Definitely not deer. You try to pretend they're stray dogs, maybe looking for scraps. But deep down you know better. Everyone sleeps closer to the fire that night. Even the ones who usually refuse. One person keeps a rifle loaded and in hand. Another sharpens a hatchet until the edge could split air. No one leaves alone anymore. Bathroom breaks happen in pairs. You light more candles than you should. Waste the last of your lamp oil just to keep the darkness back. But darkness always returns. It's 2 days later when the first real incident happens. A man, a scavenger, a quiet sort, goes missing after heading to check the snare traps half a mile out. He's late coming back, then later, then too late. You organise a search party, what's left of one anyway, and you fan out carefully through the woods, calling his name in hoarse voices that sound smaller than they should. You find his hat first, then his bag, then the blood. Not much, just a splash frozen in place, a red stain on white. And then, drag marks. You follow them for a while, but not far. You don't need to see what's at the end. You already know. You gather his things, say nothing, and walk back. No one asks questions. That night you move the fire closer to the centre of the cabin and double bar the door with a plank from the ceiling. The cold creeps in faster, but you all decide it's worth it. You sleep in shifts now. Always someone awake. Always someone watching. The next morning a thin man, barely more than bones, pulls you aside. Boy. He says he's heard the wolves before, but this isn't normal. He claims he saw yellow eyes in the dark staring right into the cabin from the window slats. Not blinking, not moving, just watching. You don't dismiss him. Later, someone else says they heard footsteps behind the outhouse. Not paws, steps, as in upright, as in two-legged. You remind them that starvation makes you hear things, see things, believe things. They nod, but neither of you is convinced. There's a debate among scholars about predator attacks during trail winters. Some argue the real danger came from humans, not animals. Desperate wanderers turned raiders, half-crazed loners, outlaws. And yeah, you've thought about that too. What if what's watching isn't a wolf at all? What if it used to be a person? The fringe story someone shares, a wild, frostbitten tale, is of the Wendigo, a creature born of cold and cannibalism. Tall, thin, eyes like coals, heart made of ice. It hunts the desperate. It follows hunger. They say once you see it, you're already marked. Everyone laughs, nervously. That night you wake to scratching on the roof, not loud, just enough to notice. You sit up, hold your breath, listen. There it is again, soft, slow, deliberate. Something heavy moving overhead. You crawl out of your blanket, grab a stick and press your back to the wall. A few minutes pass, then something slides down the side of the cabin, brushing the wood as it goes. You wait until dawn to open the door. Outside, nothing but fresh snow and a single set of prints circling the cabin twice, then vanishing into the trees. Too large for a dog, too deep for a raccoon. Not quite human, you don't bring it up at breakfast, but everyone eats with their weapons beside them. You try to lay traps, crude ones, pits, tripwires, sharpened branches. Nothing catches. One morning a trap is sprung but empty, just blood, and a shredded piece of someone's coat, though no one's missing. The air is changing again, thicker, stiller. You feel watched even in daylight, and when you sleep you dream of the tree line closing in, of yellow eyes blinking from the dark, of teeth. You fought cold, hunger, sickness, gravity, but this is different. This is something waiting, and it's patient, it's funny in a bleak kind of way. How many people start talking about God when the food runs out? Not the cheery church on Sunday kind of a talk either, more like desperate bargaining with something invisible. You hear muttering at night, not from one person, from everyone, even the ones who swore they didn't believe in anything, even the ones who used to mock prayers like they were folk tales. Now, they're whispering promises to the ceiling, to the trees, to the wind itself. And why wouldn't they? When you've run out of choices, belief becomes the last form of control you have. It starts small. Someone ties a string around their wrist for luck. Another stacks 3 stones outside the cabin and bows to them every morning before eating the same spoonful of bark stew. You come outside one morning and see someone tracing crosses in the snow with their bare finger. Quiet, eyes closed, repeating a name you don't recognize. Later, someone else sets fire to a small bundle of herbs and lets the smoke waft toward the woods. To keep the spirits away, they say. You don't question it. The trail has always tested people, but winter strips them down. You can't hide behind good manners or education or wealth when you haven't eaten in 3 days and your boots have holes. What's left is raw humanity, and belief, it turns out, clings to that rawness like frost on a window. The closer death gets, the harder people grip onto something, even if it's imaginary. Historically, accounts from winter-stranded wagon trains show a dramatic uptick in spiritual activity the longer people were trapped. Prayers became more urgent. Rituals emerged spontaneously. Some groups developed strange new customs overnight, blending Christianity with folklore, native practices, and flat-out hallucination. It wasn't just religion, it was survival theatre. If you couldn't fix your body, maybe you could fix your soul. And now, in this cabin, surrounded by snow and rot and slow-breathing fear, you feel it taking hold too. You try not to. You want to be rational. You want to be the one who keeps their mind while everyone else sinks into superstition. But you can't deny that something feels off. The air's too still, the night's too long. There's a weight in the room that isn't just grief. It feels like the cabin itself is watching, listening. One of the women swears she heard someone knocking last night. Just once. 3 soft taps on the back wall. You checked. No tracks, no broken wood, but she won't sleep against the wall now. She moves to the centre, surrounded by others, her back against the hearthstone. Her hands shake even when she's still. You catch yourself counting things, 4 steps to the door, 6 logs stacked by the fire, 8 spoons left in the box. It doesn't mean anything. Not really, but it feels like if you stop counting, something bad will happen. You don't say this out loud, but others are doing it too. You watch a man sort dried pine needles into piles of 5. Another taps each piece of bark before putting it into the pot. No one calls it prayer. No one calls it madness. It's just what you do now. Someone builds a crude cross and hangs it over the cabin door. They carve a circle into the middle. Just in case, they say. In case of what? They don't explain. Fringe belief enters the room without knocking. One person mentions the cold gods, spirits that roam the wilderness, feeding on regret. Another insists that if you sleep with a mirror facing you, your soul can escape your body during dreams. That night someone turns the cabin's only mirror to the wall. You nod along. Why risk it? You try to keep faith in logic, but logic hasn't fed you. Logic hasn't kept you warm. So when you catch yourself whispering a name under your breath, your mother's maybe, or someone you once loved, you don't stop, because maybe someone is listening. The fever's getting worse, not just for you, but for everyone. You're sweating in a room that's below freezing. One man starts muttering Bible verses in his sleep, wrong ones, mixed up, words out of order. And the valley of the shadows, the rod is broken, maketh me lie beside the waterless death. You recognize pieces of it, not the whole. It's like his mind is rewriting scripture. Another wakes up screaming about fire. You shake him. He doesn't stop. He keeps asking if the smoke is inside now. His breath fogs with every word. You eventually wrap him in every blanket and rock him until he shuts down. Not calms down, shuts down. There's debate among historians about whether mass psychosis played a role in some of these late-season catastrophes. Not from madness per se, but from prolonged deprivation. Starvation, cold, grief, isolation. It breaks your mind slowly. You don't snap. You slip. Beliefs become blurrier. You see patterns in things that aren't there. And once the group accepts it, the line between faith and fear fades into snow. The man who left last week, the one who said he'd walk west for help, someone found his scarf today, frozen into a tree trunk, like it had been nailed there by the wind. You bring it back, lay it on the table, and no one touches it. It's just there. Proof that belief doesn't stop the wilderness from swallowing people whole. That night, you wake up to humming, a soft, off-key lullaby drifting from the corner. You sit up, everyone else is asleep, but the sound continues, low, measured. You follow it with your eyes, but no one's lips are moving. You press your fingers to your ears. It's still there. You don't sleep again. You don't tell anyone about it the next day. You just start humming it yourself, because belief, it gets inside you, even when you don't want it to. And out here, where the world is white and sullen and cruel, belief is sometimes the only thing left that's warm, even if it's wrong, even if it isn't yours. The first time you hear it, you think someone's telling a story. You're lying in the dark, half asleep, curled beside the stove, and it sounds like a low murmur, like someone's voice, soft and even, recounting a tale only they understand. But when you sit up, eyes crusted and heart pounding, there's no one speaking, just the crackle of the fire and the distant groaning of trees shifting under the weight of ice. You lie back down, you tell yourself it's a dream, but the voice comes again the next night. And this time others hear it too. "What was that?" someone whispers from the far corner. Another person says, "It sounded like it was in the wall." Someone else hisses for everyone to shut up. You all hold your breath. Nothing. Just silence again. And wind. The wind that never stops. You try to laugh it off the next morning, but your voice cracks halfway through. That's happening more now. People's voices breaking, hands shaking, nerves fraying like twine pulled too tight. Even the strongest among you, the ones who never cried when the kids died, the ones who shot their own horses without blinking, are staring out the windows too long these days. Like they're waiting for something to come out of the woods. Something worse than snow. Something with a face. You've been in the cabin too long, that much is obvious. The air is heavy with smoke and breath and rot. It's seeping into your skin. The walls feel closer, lower. You catch people ducking as they move through the room, like the roof's descending inch by inch. Someone nails black cloth over the windows to keep the wind out. It doesn't help, it just makes the dark darker. And then come the dreams. Not nightmares exactly. Those would be easier. These are half nightmares. Almost real moments that you carry into waking like frost in your lungs. You see your mother boiling soup, except she's faceless. You hear a fiddle playing outside the cabin, except there's no one there. You dream you're walking into Oregon, sunny fields, warm bread, a baby laughing, and then you wake up with snow in your boots and blood in your gums. One night a man screams himself awake. Everyone jolts upright. He's shaking, pointing at the ceiling, saying, "There's someone on the roof! He looked in! He looked in!" You rush outside, barefoot in the snow, eyes darting, nothing, just stars, a few broken shingles, your own breath clouding around your face. When you come back in, no one meets your eyes, not even the man who screamed. The next morning you find footprints on the roof. No one talks about it. Historically, survivors of winter entrapments reported shared hallucinations, group delusions, as modern psychologists call them. Common themes included shadow figures, whispers, music, and the sense of being watched. Some claimed the forest had eyes. Others drew symbols on the inside of tents to keep evil out. Rational minds blamed starvation. But logic doesn't hold much weight when the wind sounds like it's whispering your name. Someone in your group starts drawing, on the walls, on the floor, symbols scratched with charcoal from the fire, circles, triangles, spirals. At first you think it's idle distraction. Then you notice they're drawn only where the wind hits hardest. Corners, cracks, the coldest parts of the room. You don't say anything. Neither does anyone else. The drawings stay. That night the voice comes back, closer this time. You can't make out the words, but it's speaking. Rhythmic, patient, like it's reciting something, a story, a warning, a lullaby. You press your hands to your ears. The sound leaks through anyway. Someone else hears it and weeps, silently. Just tears rolling down their face, unnoticed. The fringe folklore now floats openly. Someone mentions the Yinal-Lushi, the skinwalker. Someone else counters with Leshi, the forest spirit that misleads travellers. Another tells the tale of the cold man, who walks the snows and steals names. Once he has your name, he owns your warmth, your memory, yourself. They say not to speak your own name out loud anymore, just in case. You sleep with your back to the wall now, your boots on, knife under your blanket. You don't believe in monsters, not really, but you've learned belief isn't the point, and fear is the point. And right now, fear is everywhere. Thick in the air, heavy in your lungs, you can taste it when you swallow. One of the children, quiet, sunken-eyed, points to a corner and says, "He's standing there." You look, nothing, but the space feels colder than the rest of the room. The child won't go near it. She won't explain, just pulls her blanket tighter and turns her face to the wall. The fire burns down early that night. No one has the strength to keep it going. You lie there, teeth chattering, eyes wide in the dark, listening to breathing that doesn't belong to anyone in the cabin. There's a debate among historians about whether these trail-time hauntings were rooted in trauma or psychosis. But reading about it isn't the same as living it. You're living it. You're in a house full of strangers who were once companions. Now they glance at shadows, sleep with knives, and whisper words you don't recognize. Some have stopped talking altogether. One stares into the fire for hours, unmoving, eyes flicking left to right like she's reading something written in the flames. You try to tell yourself this is normal. Stress, starvation, isolation. But one morning you find words scrawled on the inside of the cabin door. Not in charcoal, in something dark, sticky, red. The message reads, "I can see you too." No one claims it. You scrub it off with snow and a shaking hand. That night no one speaks, no one dreams, just the sound of breathing, and something outside, pacing, waiting. It snowed again last night. A fresh layer, thick and blinding, erasing all signs of what came before. No footprints, no drag marks, no broken branches. Just smooth, white silence pressing down on the world like a lid. It's beautiful in the way tombstones are beautiful. Clean, cold, final. You wake up with a start, unsure of what stirred you. A sound, maybe, or the absence of one. You lie there under the shared blanket, listening. The cabin is still, the fire's out. Your breath curls in front of you in the dim blue morning light. Everyone else is asleep, or pretending. You crawl out, your knees popping from stiffness, and look around. And that's when you realize the door is open. Just a crack. Not blown open, not knocked off its hinges, just open. Like someone left quietly, or something came in. Your stomach twists. You grab your coat and push the door fully open, snow groaning beneath the wood as it moves. The wind slices into you like glass. There are no prints, of course, just that perfect, lying snow. You don't go far, just a few steps out into the cold, scanning the tree line, listening for breath, for snapping twigs, for anything. But there's only that eerie hush, the kind of silence you only get when snow covers everything, including the things that used to make noise. You go back inside, close the door, bolt it, and don't mention Murret. Later that morning, someone notices what's missing. The old man, the one with the limp. He'd been quiet for days, said his hip was locking up, couldn't get warm no matter how close to the fire he sat. Someone swears they saw him in the corner before bed. But now, gone. You search the cabin twice, then the woodshed, then outside briefly just to say you did. He's not there. No note, no scream, just gone. Someone says, maybe he walked out, gave up. Here another mutters, or maybe something took him. And nobody argues. That's where you are now, the space between rational and resigned. You all know better than to say what you're thinking, that this place wants you, that it's collecting you piece by piece. And now the old man is part of the collection. You light the fire again, slowly, carefully. No one wants to waste matches. The room fills with that familiar scent, smoke and damp wool and lingering fear. You sit around it like always, but something's changed. You feel it in the way people won't meet each other's eyes, in how tightly they wrap their blankets, how they angle themselves so no one's back is facing the door. No one talks about leaving anymore. Even the bravest among you have stopped pretending there's a road ahead. Historically, this was the final stage, when the weather didn't break, when supplies ran out, when hope was thinner than the ice outside. That's when people began fading, not just physically, mentally, psychologically. They stopped planning, stopped arguing, just existed. There are accounts from surviving diaries that mention this silence. Long stretches of days where no one spoke. People sat in circles staring, not even blinking much. Not angry, not sad, just done. You see that now. One woman, once loud, sharp-tongued, fearless, now hasn't spoken in 3 days. Just sits by the fire, combing her fingers through the same lock of hair over and over. A child who used to sing at night now hides under the bunk and bites their knuckles until they bleed. You tried to stop them once. They hissed at you like a cornered animal. You let them be after that. The fringe detail that comes to mind, maybe because your brain is doing backflips to avoid despair, is that some cultures once believed winter was a spirit, not a season. A force with a face, an entity that tests you. Those who respect it survive. Those who fight it vanish. You're not sure what category you fall into. You've been respectful, and you fought, and still you're here. But for how long? That evening someone knocks over the soup pot. Bansu. No one says anything. Just watches it spill into the dirt floor like it's blood. There's no yelling, no scolding. You all just look down, then away. The person who spilled it sits in the corner after, silent, eyes on the door. The next night someone else leaves. No one sees it happen. But in the morning they're gone. Their bedrolls empty. Boots missing. No note. No trail. Another person collected by the woods. You check the door. It's latched from the inside. No one understands that. You try to talk about it. Start a discussion. Anything. But the words won't come. Your throat is raw from dryness, from cold, from grief. And your mind? It's tired. So tired. You begin forgetting things. You forget what day it is. You forget people's names. You forget your name. There's a diary in the corner. Belong to someone who's not here anymore. You flip through it. Most of it's illegible, shaky handwriting, nonsense phrases, drawings of things with too many arms. The last page says, "Don't trust the snow. It remembers." You close the diary. You don't open it again. That night the door creaks open. No wind, just a creak, like someone nudging it with a finger. You lie still. Everyone does. No one moves. No one breathes. The fire sputters. And in the glow you swear you see something standing there. Tall, still, just outside. You blink. Gone. In the morning, the youngest member of the group is missing. You find their blanket tossed aside like they were never there, but the door's still latched. You begin to suspect something's inside now, or maybe it always was. That night you sit with your back against the door, knife in your hand, eyes open, muscles stiff. You don't sleep, you just wait. Because you know something's coming, and you know it's not here for help. The wind picks up, the fire dies, and in the dark you finally understand you're not alone in this cabin. You never were. You haven't blinked in what feels like an hour. Your eyes burn, but you keep them open anyway, fixed on the door. Or what used to be the door. Now it's just a thin boundary between what's left of you and whatever waits on the other side. Your back is pressed against it, your legs pulled up tight, and the knife in your hand is so cold it might be frozen to your palm. Someone across the room stirs in their sleep. Or maybe they're not sleeping. Maybe they're just lying there, the same way you are, pretending it's all still manageable. It isn't. No one talks anymore. You've moved past that stage. Words feel like lies. They suggest something can be explained, solved, fixed, but you're long past solutions. All that's left is watching and waiting and not being the next one to disappear. There are 5 of you now. You think. Maybe 6. It's hard to tell. There were 20 when the snow came. You remember that vaguely. Laughter, arguments, someone whittling a flute, someone making stew. You used to think about Oregon, what it would be like, how it would smell, how soft the earth would feel under your boots. Now you think about fire. About not being alone when your body finally stops. You don't know what day it is. You barely remember your own name, but the cabin remembers, that much you're sure of. It creaks differently now. The wind outside doesn't just howl, it speaks. Not in words exactly, but in rhythm, in feeling. You feel it in your chest, in your jaw. It's not asking for anything, it's just announcing itself. Over and over. I am here, I am here, I am here. This morning someone finally snapped. The woman with the long braid, the one who used to sing to herself in the evenings, she started laughing and wouldn't stop. Not a giggle, not even manic. Just this low, awful chuckle that sounded like it had been hiding in her throat all winter, waiting for its moment. You watched her bend over the fire, tears running down her cheeks, giggling like death had just told her a joke. No one tried to stop her. No one knew how. Then she walked to the door, opened it wide, and stepped out. Barefoot. Didn't even take her coat. You were too stunned to move. You saw her silhouette vanish into the snow like she'd been claimed. Swallowed. One moment there, the next not. You waited a minute, maybe two, then someone closed the door again. No one said a word. Historically, there are stories like this. Wanderers, they were sometimes called. People who reached the edge and simply walked away from shelter into the storm. No good reason, no preparation. Some were found later, curled beneath trees, clutching something useless, a spoon, a book, a lock of someone else's hair. Others were never found, just gone. The fringe explanation, folklore again, was that the snow called to people, whispered to them, promised warmth, peace, reunion. And if you listened long enough, you believed it. You understand that now. You hear things when you're alone. Breathing that's not yours, humming low and soft from under the floorboards. You know the wind can't hum, but what else could it be? Today you tried to eat a candle. Just a bite. You didn't swallow it. You just wanted to taste something different. It tasted like wax and defeat. You saw something, too, just past the tree line. A figure, not quite human. Tall, but wrong. Crooked. The proportions were off. It didn't move, not when you looked at it, but when you blinked, it was gone. Like it had never been there. But you know it was. You felt it watching, measuring. You don't tell the others. Not because you're scared they'll think you're crazy. Because you're scared they'll say, yeah, we saw it too. There's debate among scholars, of course there is, about what exactly happened to those stranded in winter cabins. Some say hypothermia causes hallucinations. That's true. Others say carbon monoxide poisoning from poor ventilation might explain the voices. That's also true, maybe. But you've had a fire going every night. You've opened the door a dozen times. You're breathing fresh air. It's not the firewood. Which means maybe it's something else. Something old, something buried under all this snow. You can't shake the feeling that the mountain doesn't want you here anymore. Not because it hates you, but because you've seen too much of it. You've peeled back its skin, slept in its belly, become something it doesn't want escaping. That night someone builds a barrier from furniture across the door. A chair, a box, part of a bunk bed. It won't help and everyone knows it, but it feels like trying, and trying is all you've got left. You wedge yourself near the corner of the room, bundled in every scrap of cloth, your knife beside you. Not for protection, just for control. If it comes through the door, you want to meet it on your own terms. You lie awake, eyes fixed on a knot in the wooden wall. You imagine it's an eye, watching, blinking slowly, approving of your patience. Eventually your mind drifts. You dream of fire, but not the warm kind. Wildfire, rushing through trees, burning everything behind you. You're running toward it, not away. You wake to darkness. Then, a sound. Something inside the walls. Not scratching, breathing. You hold your own breath to listen better. It's still there. Slow, calm, not in a hurry. It knows you hear it. It's not hiding anymore. You wake the others, quietly, urgently. They hear it too. No one panics, no one cries. You all just gather near the fire and wait. Wait to see what it will do next, or... Because the worst part isn't that it's coming. The worst part is that it might already be here. The morning is too quiet. Not still. Quiet. Stillness you've learned to live with. Stillness is the forest holding its breath, snow-blanketing noise. The sound of nothing stretching out in all directions. But this quiet is different. It's active. Alert. Like something is listening. Like something is waiting for you to speak first. You sit up, your body cracking like old furniture. The fire's down to glowing embers, barely enough heat to keep your fingers pliable. You don't remember falling asleep, but your boots are still on, and your knife is still clutched tight in your hand. You check the others, 4 of you now, if the shapes curled under the blankets are still alive. You don't check, you can't handle it. You need to believe they're breathing, and the door is open again, just an inch. Always just enough to remind you that the line between in here and out there is thinner than you pretend. You shut it carefully, gently, like you're afraid of waking someone, or something. The barricade you made last night is shifted to the side, not knocked over, not broken. Moved, deliberately. You don't say anything, you don't wake the others, you just sit back down, stare at the fire, and listen to the quiet. Mid-morning someone finally speaks, a single sentence. "We're not getting out of here." Not a question, not a plea, just a fact. You nod, because saying anything else feels dishonest. Someone else suggests a walk, just a short one, around the cabin just to stretch legs. You all know the real reason, a head count. You need to be sure the forest isn't hiding anyone else. You wrap yourselves in every layer you have and step out together, like a funeral procession. The snow is soft today, almost powdery. It falls gently, lazily, not in anger like before. The sky is pale grey, stretched tight, but the air isn't as sharp. If it weren't for the bones under the trees and the sunken expressions on your faces, it could almost be beautiful. You circle the cabin once, scanning for footprints. None. No drag marks, no blood. But near the back, half buried in the snow, you find something new. A handprint. Long fingers, twisted, pressed deep into the snow as if made by something with weight. No one says anything, no one touches it. You go back inside and push the furniture back in front of the door. One of the others starts mumbling soon after. The young man with the hollowed cheeks and thousand-yard stare. He hasn't spoken in days, but now he's whispering nonsense in the corner, rubbing ash into his palms. You kneel beside him. He doesn't even look up, just keeps repeating one phrase. "It wears their fame." You ask what he means. He doesn't explain, and you don't press. That night you eat bark boiled with melted snow. The texture is grainy, and it clings to your teeth like guilt. No one complains, not anymore. You're far past the point of hoping for real food. All you hope for now is fullness, a way to trick your body into thinking it's not starving. Historically, starvation affects the brain just as much as the body. Hallucinations, delusions, emotional flatlining. It's not uncommon for survivors of extreme famine to speak of presence hallucinations, a sensation that someone is standing directly behind you, even when no one is. Sometimes it's a loved one, sometimes a stranger, sometimes, they say, it's a mirror version of yourself. You felt that presence more than once. Last night you even thought you heard your own voice. Outside the cabin, calling your name, not panicked, not shouting, just inviting. You didn't open the door, but you wanted to. That's the part that's bothering you now. You're not afraid of dying anymore. You're afraid of forgetting why you were afraid in the first place. Someone suggests burning the cabin, not as a plan, just as an option. If it's already inside, they say, then maybe we just take it with us. No one says no, but no one says yes either. Instead, someone begins carving into the wood of the walls. Symbols again, spirals, slashes, circles inside circles. They don't explain and no one asks. You just move around them like you're sharing space with something delicate and unstable. Like a candle flame too close to the edge. You sleep in shifts again, 2 on watch, the rest huddled close to the fire. During your shift, you hear footsteps on the roof, not fast, not heavy, just deliberate. One step, pause, another. You don't go outside, you don't light a lantern, you just sit by the fire, your eyes locked on the ceiling, your heart beating so loud you think it might give you away. When morning comes, the snow is undisturbed, but you know better. And then comes the final straw. The girl, the last child among you, starts to change. At first it's small, a twitch in her smile, a stiffness in her voice. She sits differently, looks at you differently. You tell yourself you're imagining it. Then she starts saying things she shouldn't know, things that happened before she was born, details of your life you never shared, a nickname your mother used, the name of your dog from when you were 5. She says it into a voice that doesn't belong to her, low, flat, wrong. Someone suggests she's possessed, someone else says she's become it. And you start wondering if this is what survival looks like now, choosing who you trust even when their face is familiar. There's debate among anthropologists about identity fracture during trauma, how prolonged isolation and starvation can create disassociation so strong that you no longer recognize yourself or others. But this isn't psychological. This is something else. That night she stares at you while you sleep. You know because you wake up and find her sitting 6 inches from your face, grinning. You don't scream, you just roll over and pretend you're still asleep. When you open your eyes again, she's gone. No one knows where she went. The door was never unlatched. You sit by the fire as the sun rises, and for the first time you start to wonder if maybe you're the one who changed. If maybe it's not something getting in, maybe it's something coming out. You don't say anything, because the others are watching you now, and you're not sure if you should be afraid of them, or if they should be afraid of you. You used to think madness would come suddenly, like falling through ice. One clean break and then it's over. You're gone, sunk, unreachable. But no, madness on the trail is slow, a cold seeping up from your socks into your spine, curling fingers around your mind in a slow, steady squeeze. It doesn't take everything at once. It lets you keep enough to function, to worry, to doubt. That's the worst part. You're still in there somewhere, watching yourself unravel. You haven't spoken in 2 days. You can, physically. You've tried, mouthing words to yourself when no one's looking. But the sound of speech now feels offensive, like shouting in a graveyard. Everyone's too quiet to interrupt. All that remains are glances, gestures, and a kind of silent understanding. We're not coming back from this. There are 3 of you left, maybe 4. It's hard to say. One man hasn't moved in a full day. He sits in the corner, eyes wide open, staring at the fire like he's watching something crawl out of it. You checked his pulse once, gently. Still there? Barely. You let him be. Someone else has started speaking in a voice not their own. Low, female, calm. The problem? He's a 30-year-old blacksmith with a voice like gravel. You'd think it was some sort of deranged joke if he didn't keep talking in that voice, even in sleep. Especially in sleep. He says strange things. The snow isn't real. The meat remembers. He's wearing her skin. You don't ask who he is. You're not sure you want to know. The firewood's gone. You burned the last of the bunk frame last night. The walls are still intact, but now you're eyeing them like meat on the bone. Every board in this place is a potential meal for flame or madness. Your fingers twitch at the thought. It's not just survival anymore. It's ritual. Keep the fire going no matter what, even if it means burning your past. The smoke is changing too. It smells different. Sweet almost. And sometimes when you stare into it you see things. Faces. Yours. But younger. Clean. Before all this, and sometimes not yours. A woman you don't recognize. A child, mouth open in a silent scream. You blink, and the smoke curls away like it never meant anything at all. There's a crack in the ceiling now. You didn't notice it before, but it's spreading. It runs down the centre beam like a scar, growing slowly, splitting the cabin in 2. Someone claims it's a sign that the structure's failing, but the way it moves, the way it breathes, it feels like the cabin's mouth finally opening. You haven't eaten in 3 days. Even the bark is gone. Even the shoelaces. You found someone chewing on a scrap of leather last night, gnawing like a dog. You didn't stop them. You were jealous. Historically, this is where the worst happened. When the last food ran out. When those still alive were too weak to dig graves. When bodies became options. Some did it quietly. A bite here, a muscle there. Others performed it as ceremony. Cutting carefully. Boiling the flesh in snowmelt. Whispering prayers. There are journals that describe this with eerie calm. Like they were simply describing the weather. Maybe that's how they coped. Maybe that's how you'll cope. You're starting to look at the man in the corner differently, just thinking. You're not proud of it, but you're hungry. There's an old story from a different winter, different trail, the Donner Party, of course. Everyone knows them, everyone makes the jokes, but you think about them differently now. You understand something others don't. They didn't lose their humanity when they ate the dead. They lost it long before. The chewing was just the final act. The applause after a very long, very quiet performance of breaking. And you're still in Act 3. But the curtain's coming down. Someone tried to leave again today, didn't tell anyone. Just put on boots, someone else's boots, and slipped out during the false dawn. You found the prints in the snow, they went a few yards, then veered off. Then stopped. Just stopped. No return prints. No trail, just one set of tracks that ended like the person had been lifted straight up into the sky. You stood there staring at the last footprint. It looked perfect, untouched. The edge is still crisp, like whoever made it had only just stepped there. You waited for a sign, a sound, anything, but the snow just fell. Soft, silent, sincere. The fringe theory is that the snow hides its own victims, swallows them, makes them part of itself. There are whispers that the forest consumes memory, that if you die out here, you're not just forgotten, you're erased. You become one with the ice of the trurs, the silenced, not buried, absorbed. That footprint is already gone now. Back inside, you check the fire again, nothing but coals. You break off part of the window frame, burn it. Doesn't matter if the wind gets in. You welcome it. You need something real. The man in the corner finally moves. Slowly, blinks, looks at you, says your name the wrong way. Not how anyone says it, not how you say it. Like it's a costume you forgot you were wearing. You ask him what he wants and he says, to remember what you tasted like. You don't sleep that night. You sit by the door, knife drawn, pulse sluggish, mouth dry as ash. The fire's out, but you still stare at the place where flames used to be. You remember warmth like it was a rumour. At some point, the blacksmith starts humming again. Same song the girl hummed before she vanished. Low, steady, not cheerful, a lullaby for graves. And somewhere outside, footsteps crunch in the snow. This time not soft, not subtle. They walk straight to the door and stop. You hold your breath. You feel it standing there. It doesn't knock. It waits, like it knows you're not strong enough to stop it. And maybe, just maybe, you don't want to. Because this cabin isn't a shelter anymore. It's a womb. And something new is about to be born. Not rescue, not salvation, something else. Something made of ice and hunger, and the pieces of you that didn't survive. You put your hand on the door, not to close it tighter, but to open it. Just a crack, just enough. Your hand rests on the wooden door, fingers stiff and numb, but somehow still trembling. The cold no longer surprises you, it's just another layer of reality out here. Like smoke or silence. You press your palm flat against the wood, feel the frost clinging to the grain, and realise you don't even remember what warmth really feels like. Just that it used to exist. That somewhere, long before the trail, you'd held a mug of coffee in your hands and watched the sunrise without needing to brace against it. But that was someone else's life. You're not sure who you are now. Behind the door, the presence lingers. It doesn't breathe, doesn't shuffle or growl or whisper. It just is. A steady weight of awareness, like the pressure in your ears when a storm rolls in. You're not afraid anymore. Fear takes effort. What you feel now is older than fear. It's surrender. One of the others wakes, what's left of them. The blacksmith, maybe. His body creaks as he shifts under his mouldy blanket, and he mumbles something that sounds like your name, or not your name. The one it calls you, the one you never told anyone. You don't turn to look at him. He knows not to move. Everyone knows not to move when it's this close. The wind outside carries no sound, and that's what makes it loud. You strain to hear footsteps again, but they're gone, replaced by something quieter. The settling of snow, the occasional groan from a pine under too much weight, and deeper still, something like a heartbeat, slow, heavy and distant, as if the mountain itself is alive and you're inside its chest. You think about opening the door again, not to run, not even to escape, just to see, to meet it, whatever it is. After all this time, doesn't it deserve a face? Then something behind you moves. Not the blacksmith, not the nearly dead man in the corner, not even the fire which has long gone out. It's the wall. You turn slowly and watch a sliver of snow drift down from a crack above, but it's not falling naturally. It's shaking, and the crack is widening. Splintering line pushing downward like a fracture in a bone. The cabin is splitting in half. It makes sense. You've been feeling it for days, like a seam in your chest that couldn't quite hold. Now the house is doing the same. The pressure has to go somewhere. One of the others groans. The sound is wet. Wrong. You glance over and see the man in the corner rise to his feet, slow and puppet-like, limbs stiff but determined. His eyes are open but not really seeing, or maybe seeing too much. He walks to the middle of the cabin, looks at the fire pit, now just a ring of cold ash, and says, "It's here." Not in fear, not in warning, in welcome. Historically, the final days of winter trap trail groups were rarely recorded. Most survivors didn't want to remember. Those who did wrote in detached tones, their words scattered and vague. References to strange behaviour, visions, shared delusions, a belief that the woods had come alive, that the cold was watching. Fringe historians collected these accounts into dusty little volumes that no one read, books full of symbols and sketches and stories so strange they were dismissed outright. but you believe them now because you're living one. The man at the centre of the cabin lifts something from the floor, a piece of blackened wood sharpened on one end. He raises it like a priest might lift a relic and presses it to his own throat. You lunge forward without thinking, not to save him, to stop whatever comes out. But you're too late. He cuts, not deep, just enough. And the cabin changes, not dramatically, not with a flash of light or a quake, just a feeling like the room inhaled. The crack in the walls spreads suddenly, slicing down to the floor with a thunderous snap. The entire structure groans like a dying animal, and snow bursts through the break in a powdery wave. You stumble backward, coughing, eyes stinging. And there it is, not a figure, not even a shadow, but a presence standing where the wall used to be. It doesn't move, doesn't speck, but its shape warps the air around it, like heat, but cold, like grief, but alive. You stare, and it stares back. A sound fills your ears, low, vibrating, like a whisper made of bone. You feel it in your teeth, in your spine. It's not a word, but it means something. Something old, something permanent. You take a step forward. You don't know why. Maybe you've been walking toward this all along. Maybe this was never about Oregon, never about farmland or new beginnings. Maybe the trail didn't lead west, it led here. To this cabin, to this moment, to it. The presence opens, no mouth, but still an opening, a space inside itself. And you feel warmth, real warmth, not a trick, not imagined. Actual, impossible heat rolls out from it like summer, like campfires, like kitchens and candles and skin on skin. Your eyes water, your skin flushes. The others feel it too, they crawl toward it hard, half dead, mouths open, arms outstretched. You should stop them, you don't, because part of you wants it too. The promise of release, of an end, of becoming part of something bigger than hunger and frost and waiting. The blacksmith touches it first, and he vanishes, not in pain, in peace. He simply dissolves, like he was never quite real to begin with. The warmth fades slightly, the presence flickers, it's choosing. You're next. You walk slowly, step by step, through the snow-slicked floor. Your feet crunch on ash and bone. Your lungs burn from the heat. You reach out, then stop. Because you remember something. A name, not yours, someone else's. Someone you lost on the trail, someone you could still honour. And that spark, that tiny ember of resistance flares up in your chest like a forgotten fire. You take a step back. The presence tilts, almost confused. Another step. You're not running, but you're refusing. And in that refusal, something breaks. The warmth vanishes. The air turns to knives. The cabin begins to collapse, slowly at first, then all at once the roof gives way, the walls fold in, and the presence howls, not in anger, not in vengeance, but in hunger. You dive through the back wall just as it crumbles, roll into the snow, gasping, coughing. Your limbs burn, your eyes sting, but you're alive. You lie there, staring up at the grey sky, your breath rising in ragged clouds, and for the first time in weeks, the silence around you is empty. No whispers, no footsteps, no presence, just cold and you. You're not saved. You're not whole, but you're free, at least for now. And if there's still a road ahead, still a few miles between you and spring, you're going to walk it. You don't remember exactly how far you walk, only that each step is quieter than the last. No voice in the trees, no breath on the back of your neck, just snow and sky, and the echo of something ancient behind you, sealed now maybe. Or maybe just satisfied. The clouds hang low over the ridge, soft and heavy, but there's a lightness beneath them. Not sun, just the absence of pressure. A sky not watching you anymore. Your body moves slowly, like it's confused to be obeying again. Your feet crunch through drifts, boots stiff and soaked, legs barely listening. But you keep moving. That part matters most. Forward. You don't know if it's north or west, or if it's even the right direction, but it's away, and that's enough. Sometime around dusk, though time doesn't mean much anymore, you see a shape ahead, not a cabin, not another ghost, a post, a mile marker. You can't read it. The snow's buried most of it. But someone built it, and that means people, civilization, or at least the bones of it. You cry for the first time in days, just a few tears, hot, real, they sting. You follow the marker down a narrow trail. The pines give way to open slope, At the bottom, barely visible, a wooden structure leans into the wind. A barn, a shack. You don't know, and it doesn't matter. It has walls, it has a door, and when you push it open, there's no presence, just dark, just space. You collapse onto the floor, and you don't dream. In the spring, a passing wagon finds the remains of your group, what's left of the cabin, the footprints leading away, and far, far down the ridge, one survivor curled beneath a blanket of pine needles, eyes closed, skin pale but chest rising, still breathing. They never ask what happened in that cabin, and you never tell them. Some stories are too old to explain, too cold to remember, too alive to stay buried. But you carry it with you, quietly, like a scar beneath your shirt, a secret between your ribs, because winter on the Oregon Trail didn't kill you. Not exactly, it remade you. And some nights when the wind howls just right, you still hear it whispering. You could have stayed. But you didn't. You kept walking, and that's what survival really is. One foot, then the next. Even when the trail disappears, even when no one believes what you saw, you walked out of winter, and that's enough.